The Magical Plants by Paracelsus. Introduction. Occult botany. To thoroughly know the world of plants from the point of view of occultism, it becomes absolutely necessary to study them in their relation to the macrocosm and the microcosm, according to the theories of Paracelsus. These theories are found scattered throughout the works of the famous physician and alchemist. We have gathered them with care, ordering them so as to form a complete body of doctrine, which we have sought to condense in this small volume. We are aware that our modest work presents several gaps and omissions of certain importance. For this very reason, we cannot even remotely boast of being able to present to scholars a very extensive, much less complete, occult botany. However, we feel satisfied, to a certain extent, for having laid the foundations of a science that was wavering in its origins, stagnant for centuries in an amorphous state, and finally, in our times, completely forgotten. Our study has led us to conceive a botanogeny, a physiology, and a physiognosy whose characteristics approach occult science more closely than what is officially recognized. Botanogeny will enlighten us regarding the cosmogonic principles whose germs in action produce in nature the kingdom that occupies us. Vegetable physiology will lead us to the study of the vital forces that, in their constant evolution, constitute its food and development. And finally, vegetable physiognomy, the science of signs or science of astral correspondences, will teach us to know, by their exterior aspect, the secret forces of each of the plants. Besides being one of the most interesting aspects of occult science, the study of vegetable physiognomy constitutes a theme almost unpublished in Spanish esoteric literature. We will conclude this brief essay by publishing, at the end of the work, a small dictionary of occult botany, in which will figure a certain number of plants and flowers with the indication of their curative properties and their magical virtues. Whenever we know them, we will point out, in their proper time, their astral signs, that is, the astrological influence to which they are subjected, whose knowledge is of great transcendence for the student of occultism who is somewhat prepared. Chapter 1. The Vegetable Kingdom. Botanogeny. For this small study, we made the decision to concern ourselves only with the traditional theories corresponding to occult botany, and for this reason we leave aside the fundamental principles of official botany. We will therefore begin by providing the reader with those knowledges that we deem truly authentic. First of all, we will recur to one of the oldest monuments we possess, the Sefer Bereshit of Moses, which will enlighten us regarding the initiates of the red race and the black race. In the first chapter, second verse, he expresses himself in the following manner, proceeding in the declaration of his will. Said the Lord of Lords, "The earth shall bring forth a vegetative herb, and, producing an innate germ, a fruitful substance shall yield its own fruit according to its kind, and shall possess in itself its germinative power." And so it was done. This coincides exactly with the third day of creation, according to the order that will be transcribed below. Fire. First day, creation of light. Water, air. Second day, fermentation of the waters and their division. Earth. Third day, formation of the earth, fire. Fourth day, formation of the sun. Water, air, birds and fish. Fifth day, fermentation of the waters and the air. Earth. Sixth day, fermentation of the earth, men and animals. Considering Genesis as a whole, the initiated rabbi will teach us that, from the cosmogonic point of view, the figure of Isaac represents the vegetable kingdom. His sacrifice, narrowly avoided, his filiation, the name of his parents and his children, and the acts of his symbolic life provide all the necessary proofs that corroborate this affirmation. With the aim of not wearying our readers with too arduous symbolism, we will abstain from every detail and will enter fully into the deciphering of the Hermetic theories, the study of which can lead us to a happy result. Hermetic theories. In the primordial origin of things, philosophers conceived a chaos in which the forms of the entire universe were prefigured, a matrix or cosmic matter, and on the other hand, a generating fire wherein the reciprocal action constituted the monad, the stone of life or Mercury, the means and end of all forces. This fire is ardent, dry, male, pure, strong. It is the Spirit of God carried over the waters, the head of the dragon, the sulfur. This chaos is a spermatic water, warm, female, humid, muddy, impure, the mercury of the alchemists. The action of these two principles in heaven constitutes the good principle, light, heat, the generation of things. The action of these two principles upon the earth constitutes the bad principle, obscurity, cold, putrefaction, or death. Upon the earth the pure fire converts into the great limbo, the Eleaster, the one great mystery of Paracelsus, that is, a vain and confused earth, a moon with mercurial water, the brand new of Moses. Finally, the pure and celestial water becomes a terrestrial matrix, cold and dry, passive, the salt of the alchemists. In this way we see how in nature all things pass through 3 ages. Their beginning, or birth, arises in the presence of their creative principles. This double contact produces a light. Then come the darkness and a confused and mixed matter. This is fermentation. This fermentation ends with a general decomposition or putrefaction, after which the molecules of the matter in action begin to coordinate themselves according to the subtlety of the same. This is sublimation. It is life manifesting itself. Finally, the moment arrives when this last work ceases. It is the 3rd age. Then the separation between the subtle and the coarse is established. The former rises to heaven, the latter remains on earth. The remainder stays in the aerial regions. It is the final term, death. We have managed to record the course of the 4 modalities of the universal substance called elements. Fire, earth, and water we recognize easily, and we can coordinate all these notions. Establishing a table of analogy, we can read through the Pythagorean triangle. This process is followed in India's Sankhya system and in the Kabbalah, the Tarot, and the Sephiroth. Here are the acting principles in the 3 worlds, according to Hermetic terminology. In the first world, the Spirit of God, the uncreated fire, fertilizes the subtle, chaotic water, which is the created light or the soul of bodies. In the second world, that chaotic water, which is igneous and contains the sulfur of life, fertilizes the intermediate water, this viscous, humid, and fatty vapor, which is the spirit of bodies. In the third world, that spirit, which is elemental fire, fertilizes the igneous ether, which is also thick water, mud, androgynous earth, the first solid and fertilized mixture. Thus, every terrestrial creature is formed by the action of 3 great series of forces. Some come from the Empyrean heaven, others arrive from the zodiacal heaven, and the last ones from the planet to which the respective creature belongs. From the Empyrean heaven come the anima mundi, the spiritus mundi, and the materia mundi, viscous vapor, universal and uncreated seed. From the zodiacal heaven come the sulfur of life, the intellectual mercury or ether of life, and the salt of life or water principle, created seed and second matter of bodies. From the planet come the elemental fire, the elemental air vehicle of life, and the elemental water receptacle of seeds and innate seed of bodies, advent of the vegetable kingdom. In order for the vegetable kingdom to manifest itself upon a planet, it is necessary, first of all, that the latter has evolved until it is able, after having crystallized its atoms into solid earth, water, and an atmosphere, as indicated in the account of Moses. Then a wave of new life descends, which is the vehicle of the first animation upon the planet. It is, therefore, the symbol of beauty, and that is why the vegetable kingdom corresponds to Venus and has as its representative sign the spiral. This is why phyllotaxis can serve us to measure the degree of vital force of each plant. This vegetable life results from the reciprocal action of sunlight and the avidity of the inner sulfur. No tree can grow without the force of the sun, which is attracted by the essential principle of the former. Here is how the anonymous author of The Light of Egypt explains the evolution from the mineral to the vegetable. Hydrogen and oxygen, combined in water, polarize themselves and form a substance that is the opposite pole of their primitive flammable state. The heat of the sun decomposes again an infinitely small portion of the waters. The atoms of said water molecule then initiate a differential movement, which is that of the spiral in this ascension. They attract the atoms of carbonic acid and are attracted in turn by them, from which is derived a third movement, a precipitate rotation. With new combinations, a germ of physical life is then formed. Under the impulse of a central atom of fire, with the forces of oxygen and carbon being predominant, this union produces another change of polarization due to which these atoms are attracted toward the earth. The water receives them, and in this manner the first vegetative sod is formed. When these first forms of vegetation die, the atoms undertake again their march in an ascending spiral, feel attracted by the atoms of the air, and by the same process of polarization come to form lichens and increasingly perfect plants. The spirituous essence of the sun penetrated to the center of the earth through the attraction of each mixed and, by coagulation, generated an aqueous fire. and in its burning desire to return to its origin, it became retained while rising among the matrices of the most diverse species. Each of these matrices possessing a particular virtue for its species, in one it determines itself by one creation and in another by another, generating always new creations in its likeness. When this spiritual essence subtilizes itself sufficiently, it penetrates the surface of the earth and activates the germinative power of the seeds. The same theory is found exposed in a more concise manner in the Kabbalistic treatise entitled The 50 Gates of Intelligence. The enumeration of the gates of the decade of the mixed is interpreted as follows. First, application of minerals by the disjunctive of the earth. Second, flowers and saps disposed for the generation of metals. Third, seas, lakes, flowers, secretions among the alveoli. Fourth, production of herbs and trees. Fifth, forces and seeds given to each one of them, etc. To conclude this rapid exposition, we shall make known the theory of Jacob, with which one discovers a perfect identification with the two previous theories. Created on the third day by the fiat of Mars, which is bitterness, source of movement, the vegetables are born from the ray of fire in that bitterness. When God separated the universal matrix in its igneous form, and upon wishing to manifest himself in the exterior and sensible world, the fiat that came out of the Father with his will gave force to the aqueous property of the sulfur of the prima materia. And it is already known that water, as an element, is an attractive matrix. Therefore we arrive at a perfect understanding among all the exposed theories. Before the fall, the vegetables were united to the interior paradisiacal element. With the fall, holiness fled from the root and remained adhered to the terrestrial elements. As will be seen further on, only the flowers represent the true paradise, static constitution of the plant. Before tracing a sketch of vegetable physiology, it is convenient to note the principles in action that exist in the kingdom that occupies us, so that it may be possible for us to know with simplicity its complicated functioning. If we study vegetables from the point of view of their constitution, we shall recognize in them 5 principles: a matter formed by vegetative water, a soul formed by sensitive air, a form composed of concupiscible fire, a matrix, or intellect of earth, a universal and primitive essence, or memorable mixed, formed by the 4 elements that determine the 4 phases of movement, fermentation, putrefaction, formation, and growth. If we study them from the generative point of view, we shall find 7 forces in action, a matter or patient formed of lights and darkness, chaotic and vegetative, water. Here are the duties of Paracelsus, hidden exhalation of the earth by virtue of which the plant grows. A form, active principle or fire, a link between the 2 preceding ones. A movement, result of the action of the agent upon the patient. This movement, which propagates through the 4 elements, determines the 4 phases previously cited regarding the memorable mixed. All this work in its greater part preparatory and hidden, as visible results. The soul of the vegetable or embodied seed. The chlysis of Paracelsus, specific power and vital force. The spirit or organized mixed, the leafas of Paracelsus, or astral body of the plant, the body of the plant. To achieve the widest possible idea of these 2 classifications, it will be sufficient to study the analogies that are deduced from the symbolism in Greek mythology, which is rather expressive and with which we shall offer vast matter for meditation. Vegetable physiology, anatomy. Nothing is simpler than the structure of the plant. The anatomical parts are reduced to 3, and they are precisely those that, by individualizing themselves, form all the organs. The general mass of the plant is formed by cellular tissue, which can be classified as its digestive organ. Root, individualization of cellular tissue. Intestine of the plant, seed, embryo. The intervals between the ordinarily hexagonal cells form the canals that extend throughout the plant and conduct the sap with which it nourishes itself. These canals, or intercellular conduits, are therefore for plants what blood vessels and veins are for animals. Individualization of the veins. Blood system of the plant. Envelope, female organ. In the cellular tissue of the majority of plants there exist other canals that are formed by a fiber contoured in a spiral that conducts air throughout the plant. These canals or spiral vessels are for the plant what trachea are for animals, and that is how they are called trachea of plants. Leaves. Individualization of the trachea. Lungs of the plant. From this first sketch let us pass now to that of the relations that exist in the functioning between the cited organs. The embryonic development of the plant comprises the following phases. Localization of the seed in a propitious matrix, moist earth. The 3 parts of the germ begin to vegetate, feeding on the cotyledons. The root begins to absorb nutritive substances from the earth. The plant individualizes itself in its respiratory and digestive functions. In summary, it is born. Let us see how Dr. Encos summarizes vegetable physiology. Submerging into the earth, the root goes in search of alimentary matter. The leaves, seeking life in the open air or inside water, also seek the light and gases necessary for the renewal of the force that must provide virtues to the interior matter of the tissues. Said force develops by means of chlorophyll and canals of interposition. The stem, circulatory apparatus whose vessels contain, first, the ascending sap, similar to chyle, a white substance, the most subtle of foods. Second, the air absorbed by the leaves. Third, the result of the action of the air upon the nutritive sap, which is the ascending sap. Fourth, the flowers, result of the superfluous force, place of the reproduction apparatuses. Now let us study these functions in more detail. On the knowledge of them depends, effectively, the whole art of the hermetic pharmacopoeia, as will be able to be evaluated in the second part of our study. The grain or seed is composed of the following parts: the small root, the sprout or shoot, the small stem, the general center of evolution. All this is analogous to the three developments of the human embryo. The cotyledons, materials destined for the nutrition of the germ organs, analogous to the placenta, containing within itself the tree in all its power of growth. Each grain encloses a great mystery. Consequently, in the development of the grain or seed, we shall find the inverted image of the creation of the world. The tree begins to manifest itself from the moment the grain is submerged in its natural matrix, the earth. However, by itself the earth is nothing more than a passive matrix. Therefore, it cannot develop the vital spark or illuminate the ends of the seed so that the three principles, sulfur and mercury, may manifest therein. The light and heat of the sun are necessary for this to happen. Only through them will the cold subterranean fire be animated. Then the grain, carried by the force of this development, undergoes its ulterior evolution. In the following chapter, when speaking of cultivation, we shall examine what occurs when the matrix does not correspond to the grain entrusted to it. Therefore, we are already understanding three ends, three dynamisms in mutual reaction, each embracing its trinity of principles: salt, sulfur, and mercury, the ends of the earth, the ends of the grain, and the ends of the sun. The first and the last ends demand, by effect of a magnetic traction, the development of the germ in opposite directions, from which result the root and the stem, which, as is known, will exercise functions of contrary analogy in the life of the plant. Upon the harmony resulting from these three ends depends the perfect state of the stem and of the roots. Growth of the root. From the point of view of the three principles, it is known that life and magnetic sensibility reside in mercury. The subterranean mercury of minerals, almost always poisonous and laden with impurities, finds itself literally in hell. That is to say, for its own activity it finds no other food nor other object than itself. Consequently, as soon as a solar vibration reaches it, it makes it its own. The salt and the sulfur, both intimately united to its essence, absorb it totally within its body. Then the earth opens its atoms, obtains a relative freedom, and the plastic body, the salt which remained in a saturnine torpor, becomes susceptible to attraction, and finds itself effectively attracted by the ends of the germ in its homogeneous elements. Growth of the stem. In general, in its lowest part, the stem is white, up to the middle it is dark, and in its highest part, it is green. The white indicates the tendency toward expansion, suddenly liberated from the constructive powers of the root. The dark color signifies a saturnine expression, the result of the divine curse. The cortex is the part of the vegetable that finds itself in limbo. For if the great mystery is represented also in trees, the vegetable kingdom was overtaken, like all creation, by the sin of Adam. But in the beauty of the flowers, and in the sweet maturation of the fruits, one discovers even more than in other creatures of paradise. Finally, the green color represents the sign of the mercurial life which snakes through the Jupiter and the Venus, the branches, the tree. Without any doubt, the tree constitutes the most perfect type of all vegetable beings. In it, we find the influence of the stars, of the elements, of the spiritus mundi, the stars, and the one great mystery which is by itself fire and light, hatred and love, like a word pronounced by the Eternal Father, production of the nodes. The shrub grows due to the mutual emulation of the two ends, the exterior sun and the interior sun, which fulfills its mission until the natural end, which consists in the production of a sweet liquid that provides the flower with the elements of its elegant form and its beautiful colors. It is known that the 7 forms of exterior nature exercise their influence on the plant in the following order. Jupiter, Venus, and the Moon cooperate in a natural way in the expansive action of its interior sun. Mars, however, exaggerates said expansion, since he is nothing other than the igneous spirit of sulfur. The mercurial life gathers before him, and Saturn arrives at the congelation and corporification of this whirlwind. It is thus that the nodes are produced, and the branches are the result of the battle waged by the natural forces in full motion when they desire to preserve communication with the exterior sun. They are, so to speak, the gesticulations of the plant that feels oppressed and wants to live in freedom and by its own will. In the same way that in man the vital force drives out interior poisons in the form of boils, so the vital heat of the tree compels it to produce shoots and ramifications, principally when the call of the exterior ends is most powerful, as happens in the spring. In other terms, the desire of the mercurial life, or the salt, enclosed in Saturn, fights desperately, heats itself, and converts itself into sulfur. This sulfur gives a new impulse to its sun, Mercury. The latter shows a tendency to expand, and Venus furnishes the plastic substance of the shoots and branches. The flower, the sun gradually dominates the excesses of Mars. The plant diminishes in bitterness. Jupiter and Venus exhaust their activity and fuse in the matrix of the Moon. The two ends unite, so that the interior sun, the vital force of the plant, recovers its primitive state, passes to the state of sulfur, and reintegrates the regime of divine freedom, the paradise of the plant. In this same regime, the 7 forms intersect interiorly and upwards, coming into play in perfect harmony. The image of eternity is formed in time. The sulfur of the plant passes again into the latent state. The salt is transmuted. The kingdom of the sun is inaugurated with a paradisiacal joy, which is released with the perfume, in the same way that the peculiar odor is released from the bodies of saints. This is what Paracelsus calls tincture, the grain. But because of the sin of Adam and Eve, this paradise ceases very suddenly and enters again into the obscurity of the grain or seed where the 2 suns come to hide themselves. The fruit. It constitutes the hidden spirit of the elements that act during fructification. Fruits possess one good quality and another bad, which they inherited from Lucifer. They are not found, therefore, entirely under the regime of wrath, because the unique word, which is in all and through all, immortal, and even within the subterranean putrefaction of the seed, revives in them. For the word opposes resistance to the earth, and the earth did not welcome it. As soon as it is manifested, it runs to its place immediately, aggregating within itself a great quantity of plastic elements, or rather moons, which in the heat of the external sun it transforms into Venus. In this way, the pulp or flesh of the fruit develops around a center which is the sun of the internal sun. The 7 planets meet again in the fruit, and it is they that determine its flavor and aroma, waiting for Saturn to come and make it fall upon the earth from which it rose. One day, ripeness, the qualification of ripe given to fruits to signify a high point of perfection, a period in which their juice becomes sugary, is not well expressed by this name, which indicates the contrary, their state of agony. Ripeness is the result of a species of vertigo that the sun causes to the paternal principle of sulfur, and which precipitates it from eternal life into temporal life. From all this, we may now deduce the necessary indications to effect the corresponding study regarding the meaning of the various flavors that fruits possess. Summary. We have presented this rapid sketch intentionally making use of all nomenclatures. Now we shall continue it, filling a few lines dedicated to the same, employing, however, the naturalist, Buddhist, or Ionic theory for them as follows. The world may be considered created as a result of the interactions of 3 distinct forces: expansion, light or sweetness, contraction, obscurity or harshness, and rotation, anguish or bitterness. We shall find these 3 forces in the vegetable kingdom. Let us consider the germ introduced into the earth. Sweetness flees from the obscurity and the anguish that pursue it. Thence comes the growth of the plant. With the heat of the sun, the struggle of the 3 forces becomes fiercer. Contraction and rotation are doubly exalted, provoking expansion, hence the origin of the bark, of the rare and rugged knots of trees and plants. But expansion, as soon as its adversaries cease to attack, not leaving it free for a moment, extends itself with avidity in all directions. Then, when the branches emerge, the green color of the shoots begins, and the plant abandons itself to the vivifying forces of the sun, which carry it to the bud and the flower, which is its perfection of the various organs. Contraction makes a homogeneous whole, and anguish divides them into parts which cooperate jointly. Since originating from below, they see themselves obliged to obey the solar force that reaches them, coming from above. In this manner the fruit is formed, which goes on developing until the expansive energy has totally spent itself, at which moment the fruit is to fall to give expansion and birth to a new circulus vital, the OD of the plant. Since the discovery of Reichenbach, it is held as certain that in nature everything releases a species of exhalation, invisible under ordinary conditions, but visible to sensitives. This radiation varies in color, intensity, and quality. The extreme upper part of plants is always positive and the low or inferior part negative, whatever the fragment of the plant presented to the examination of the sensitive. Fruits are positive and tubers negative. The flower side of any fruit is positive. The peduncle side is negative. These observations have been used up to the present by the successors of Count Mattei for the practices of electrohomeopathy. However, I particularly cannot bring myself to believe that this polarization is of great depth. The soul of the plant. We went to seek in a book, certainly very notable, originally by Boskowitz, the testimonies of some sages who attribute to the plant life, and a sensibility similar to those of people, without alluding to Brahmanic, Buddhist, Taoist, Egyptian, Platonic, or Pythagorean doctrines, all of them more or less deeply penetrated by the spirit of vegetables. We must remember that philosophers such as Democritus, Heraclitus, and Empedocles sustained said thesis. In a more recent epoch, Percival seeks to demonstrate that the movements of roots are voluntary. Froelich, Hedwig, Bonnet, Ludwig, and F. Ed Smith affirmed that the plant is susceptible to diverse sensations to the point of guaranteeing that it is capable of knowing happiness. Erasmus Darwin, in his work The Botanic Garden, says that the plant has a soul. All the works of von Martius seek to demonstrate the same. And finally, Theodor Fechner wrote a book titled Nana, oder über das Seelenleben der Pflanzen, in which is proved, or is sought to be proved, everything that was said above. Here are the characters of analogy that plants present in relation to beings endowed with personality. In them respiration is effected by means of Malpighian vessels formed of a cellular ribbon rolled in a spiral and endowed with contraction and expansion. Air is indispensable for their life, according to the experiments of Calandrini, Duhamel, and Papin, and exercises upon the sap an action analogous to that exercised upon our blood. The underside of the leaves is full of small stomatal mouths, organs of said respiration. They receive oxygen from the air and appropriate it, and exhale in counterpart carbonic acid. They nourish themselves with carbon which they extract from carbonic acid, and during the day they exhale consequently a large quantity of oxygen. Their roots serve them as a stomach as well as the leaves. The sap is analogous to chyle. The nutrition of plants is such an active function that Bradley calculated that a home oak, at the end of 100 years, absorbs 280,000 kilograms of food. Circulation of SAP is not yet a categorically proven fact. At least it is known that plants have the quality of transpiration, which is exercised with extraordinary force. Furthermore, how do we explain the movements of plants in search of light, of the sun, of the elements of nutrition, of a terrain propitious to their life, which we observe at every step? How do we explain their amorous potency, the heat, the electricity they release at the instant of their fertilization? From where come, finally, the marvelous properties of the resurrection flower and of the rose of Jericho? The initiate has been able to verify all these phenomena and admire once more the wisdom of his predecessors as well as the penetrating intuition of the people who gave to each tree its hamadryad, to each flower its fairy, and to each herb its genius. Do not the scientific observations of which we have just made a slight summary teach us magnificently, and with all clarity, the shadowy movements of the soul of the element striving toward consciousness? Plants and animals. Bonnet of Geneva, a man of much talent, dedicates the 10th part of the totality of his works to the parallelistic comparison of plants and animals. He expresses in the following manner the result of his numerous comparative experiments. Nature descends gradually from man to the octopus, from the octopus to the sensitive plant, from the sensitive plant to the truffle. Superior species always present something of the character of inferior species, and these something also of the inferior species. Organized matter has received a nearly infinite number of diverse modifications, and all are intimately linked in graduation, like the colors of the prism. We mark points upon the images, We then trace the lines, and to this task we give the name of classifying and assigning genera. In this manner we perceive no more than the dominant tones, but the most delicate nuances escape our observation. Plants and animals are therefore nothing else but modifications of organized matter. All participate in a same essence, and the distinctive attribute is unknown to us. The plant vegetates, nourishes itself, grows, and multiplies. But vegetable grains are much more numerous than eggs or fertilized ovules in animals, except for the inferior species. For the same reason, an individual produces many more offshoots in the first kingdom than embryos in the second. In some, food is absorbed by porous surfaces, in others by a single mouth. Absorption by the inferior roots is incessant. In developed animals it is produced at intervals and by inferior roots, chiliferous vessels. In their majority, plants are hermaphroditic. Finally, plants are immobile, with the exception of the movement of leaves and of some flowers toward the sun. Animals are mobile. General conclusion. From this rapid study, it is deduced that the general movement of terrestrial life, regarding the three inferior kingdoms, appears as the gigantic effort of an organized power. Physical nature, in the sense of free will, passing from the immobility characteristic of the mineral kingdom through individualization to spontaneous movement. This is what the following four schemes clearly express, which allow one to consider each kingdom as a medium in which the atoms find themselves in a particular phase of movement. Firstly, in a state of rest, or passive, then in a state of equilibrium, later in a state of whirlwind, and finally in a state of resolution. The fifth, sixth, and seventh states represent the kingdoms for U.S. spiritual superiors to the current evolution of the human genus: minerals, vegetables, animals, men. Vegetable physiognosy. Each plant is a terrestrial star. Its celestial properties are found inscribed in the colors of the petals, and its terrestrial properties in the shape of the leaves. All magic is enclosed within them, since in their ensemble plants represent the powers of the stars. There are three distinct keys that can be employed to know, through their exterior properties, the interior virtues of a plant: the binary key, the quaternary key of the elements and the zodiacal, and the septenary or planetary key. Binary key. Here, according to St. Martin, the theory accompanied by two examples of practical application: everything, whether material or immaterial, there is an impulsive force which is the principle from which this thing receives its existence. But this universal impulsive force that we observe in nature would not exist if a comprehensive force in opposition did not also dominate it. To increase its intensity, it is this force which, by impelling it, operates at the same time the development and the appearance of all the properties and all the forms generated by the impetus of the impulsive force. Vegetation principally offers us these two laws very distinctly in all its diverse species and categories. In the stone of a fruit, resistance predominates over force. We see how it remains in the most complete inaction when the stone has been sown and vegetation re-established. This is realized because force struggles with resistance until establishing an equilibrium with it. When the fruit appears, it is because force was more able than resistance and managed to overcome all obstacles. Nevertheless, this fruit offers itself to us only as a union of a force and a resistance in its composition, in its substantial properties, and in its outer covering, that contains, unifies, preserves, and corroborates them according to this universal law of things. Before this picture, it is possible for us to observe how many wounds primitive and eternal nature has suffered, which we always recognize as the true heritage of humanity. The objective of vegetation, the said author continues in the same work, consists in transmitting to us the details of beauty, of color, and of perfection that are born in the superior regions and that tend to introduce themselves into our inferior region. Each grain of seed is a small chaos in nature. Everything is composed of a dividing action and of a divisible action. When the second finds itself deprived of the first, water is produced. When both operate, fire is produced, at the same time that the union of fire and water manifests itself through the green color of the leaves. Putrefaction locates itself in the roots and sublimation in the vivid colors of the flowers and fruits. The grains constitute the prison of the superior powers and trace, with a certain analogy, the history of the fall and the myth of Saturn devouring his children. Thus we can say that generation is a combat whose phases are shown by the sign, and that there does not exist a single being that does not manifest, by its exterior form, the history of its own birth. The kernel of the oak, for example, of a sour and acrid taste, enclosed in its acorn, indicates that this tree had to pass through a most violent effort on the part of resistance, an effort that surely aimed to annihilate it. If, in the likeness of this example, we proceed now to consider the leaf of the grapevine, the grape pip, and the properties of wine, we will soon discover that it was extremely concentrated by resistance in the pea, which constitutes the cause of its so abundant development in the shoots. That, with this expansion of water, the grapevine leaf indicates by its shape that the reason for being so abundant is because it was separated from its fire, and that its factors are binary, as happens with an infinity of plants of other classes. That consequently fire has also been very separated from water, which is by the branches of the stalk, where the leaves and the peduncle of the cluster alternate conjointly but always on the opposite side. That according to its law, this fire always rises to a greater height than the water, which is known by the peduncle of the cluster, which always climbs much higher than its corresponding leaf. That in the same way, this fire is found very close to primitive life, so much so that it can be said that they are the same thing, which leads the grapeberry to assume such a regular spherical shape that it seems to have been inflated by its stamens and its pistil, the complete circle of astral virtualities, whose number encompasses the entire circumference and establishes the equilibrium between resistance and force. That for this reason the grapeberry is so healthy and beneficial for the body when eaten with moderation. However, despite this, because of the bifurcated or binary source from which it derives, it comes to produce the most grave disturbances when its juice is abused or one eats of it in excess. Regarding these excesses, it has been observed that they are of a very particular genre. First, they arrive often at provoking disputes, and even at causing the loss of reason. Being the cause of fights and crimes, it also leads to lust, which is determined in various forms by the corresponding pip. Third, the drunkenness it produces through the of lust. Despite this, it is of all this more favorable than baneful to procreation. Classification of the elements. It is known that one of the 4 elements, besides the quintessence, corresponds to each of our 5 senses. That is, each of these 5 forms of movement reveals to us the qualities of objects through the vibration of one of our nervous or sensitive centers. Earth corresponds to smell. Water corresponds to taste. Fire corresponds to sight. Air corresponds to touch. The quintessence corresponds to the ear. Hence the origin of the composition of the distributive table below. This table covers only the simple types which are purely and exclusively theoretical. In reality, it is necessary to combine these 4 elements with one another to obtain table number 2 of the zodiacal signs, which will be able to indicate to us the general character of a plant. Now, if we wish to know a priori the qualities of a plant under the sign of Aries, if we fix our attention on this second table, we will see that Aries is a fire of earth. The qualities of this plant will be therefore, in accordance with the first table, a penetrating perfume, a spicy taste, the flowers will be red, and the plant will be of medium stalk. We judge that this example will suffice for the perfect knowledge of the said method. Furthermore, we have here, summarized by said authors, the influences of each of the zodiacal signs on the life of plants and their actuality and the manner of enlightening us practically on the matter. The plants that are found under the sign of Aries are hot and dry. The element fire predominates in them. Finally, their form offers resemblances, more or less distant, to the head and its secondary parts. The eyes, the nose, the tongue, the teeth, the beard. They have yellow flowers of acrid taste. The leaves and the stalk are weak, with 2 petals, perfume myrrh. The plants under the sign of Taurus are cold and dry. The element earth predominates in them. Their taste will be therefore acrid and of gentle scent. They have a very long stalk, raise aromatic effluvia, cool easily, and produce fruits in abundance. Some of them have the shape of a throat. Plants whose flowers are androgynous. Perfume similar to that of costus. The aromatic herb. The plants under the sign of Gemini are hot and slightly humid. Their element is air. Plants whose flowers are white or very pale, leaves extraordinarily green, sweet taste, almost always milky. They present a certain relation of form with the shoulders, the arm, the hands, the breasts, leaves with 7 points, perfume mastic. The plants under the sign of Cancer are cold and humid. Water predominates in them. They are insipid, live in swampy terrain, produce flowers of white or gray color. Their leaves have the shape of lungs, liver, or spleens. They show spots and 5 petals, camphor. The plants under the sign of Leo are hot and dry, dominated by the element fire. They bear red flowers of a very acrid, almost bitter taste. Their fruit has the shape of a stomach or a heart. They are cruciferous, perfume incense. The plants under the sign of Virgo are cold, dry, and in them earth predominates. They are climbing plants with hard tissues, yet they break easily. Their leaves and roots resemble the abdomen or the intestines. Their flowers usually bloom with 5 petals, white sandalwood. The plants under the sign of Libra are hot, moist, and aerial. Their flowers are rare, their stems tall and flexible. Their fruits or leaves resemble the shape of the kidneys, the navel, or the bladder. Their taste is sweet. They grow by preference in stony terrains, perfume galbanum. The plants under the sign of Scorpio are hot and moist. They often possess an insipid taste at times. They are watery, milky, of a fetid smell, and have the shape of man's sexual organs, red coral. The plants under the sign of Sagittarius are hot and dry. They are dominated by the element fire. They are bitter, and their shape looks like certain parts of the anal region, perfume aloes. The plants under the sign of Capricorn are cold and dry. In them, the element earth predominates. Their flowers are greenish. Their sap is toxic and coagulates, perfume nard. The plants under the sign of Aquarius are slightly hot and moist. They are dominated by air. They are usually aromatic and have the shape of legs, perfume euphorbium. The plants under the sign of Pisces are cold and moist. In them the element water predominates. They have almost no taste. They have the shape of fingers and grow often in cool and shady places near lakes and swamps. Perfume time, septenary or planetary classification. Let us see below, summarized in a few words, the basis of classification. Saturn, astringent, concentrator. Jupiter, resplendent, majestic. Mars, choleric, thorns. Sun, beauty, nobility and harmony. Venus, beauty and softness. Mercury, indeterminate. Moon, strangeness, melancholy. And developing these characters, we shall have the result that we can see in Table 3 further on. The taste is produced by the salt of the earth where the plant grows. It indicates the ideal of the plant, and the path it must follow to extract the balsam. The leaves and the stem indicate the planet that rules the plant. In every vegetable, the root corresponds to the planet Saturn, the seed and the bark to Mercury, the wood, the strong trunk to Mars, the leaves to the Moon, the flowers to Venus, the fruit to Jupiter. The planetary science. The plants influenced by Saturn are heavy, sticky, astringent, bitter, acrid, or acidic in taste, and produce fruits without a flower. They reproduce without seed. They are rough and blackish. They possess a penetrating smell, rare shape, and sinister shadow. They are resinous, narcotic, grow very slowly, are consecrated in funeral ceremonies, and are employed in works of black magic. The plants that receive the influence of Jupiter have a sweet, mild, subtle, weakly acidulated taste. All vegetables of this class bear fruit. Although some do not show the flower, many yield abundant fruit of splendid appearance. The plants influenced by Mars are acidic, bitter, acrid, and spicy, and become poisonous through excess heat. They are also thorny, cause itching when touched, or harm the sight. The plants of the Sun are aromatic, of a quite acidulous taste. They become admirable counterpoisons. Some of them remain evergreen. They possess the virtue of divination and are advised against evil spirits. They move toward the sun or present its figure in their leaves, flowers, or fruits. The plants influenced by Venus are of a sweet taste, pleasant and unctuous. They produce flowers but without bearing fruits. They possess seeds in abundance and are generally aphrodisiac. Their perfume is almost always mild. They are employed in practices of sexual magic. The plants that are under the influence of the planet Mercury possess a mixed taste. They produce flowers and leaves, but not fruits. The flowers are small and of varied colors. The plants that suffer the influence of the moon are insipid. They live near water or within water. They are cold, milky, narcotic, and anti-aphrodisiac. Their leaves usually are of large size. They are employed in witchcraft offerings. Sympathy and antipathy of plants. According to the signs, there is sympathy between Taurus Cancer, Sagittarius Gemini, Libra Aquarius, Cancer Libra, Virgo Taurus, Scorpio Cancer. There is antipathy between Taurus Libra, Scorpio Gemini, Capricorn Cancer, Sagittarius Virgo, Aries Leo, enemy planets, Saturn Mars, friendly planets, Venus with all, mainly with Mars, Mercury with all, especially with Jupiter, combinations of influences. For the aid of the student reader, let us see some examples of the results produced by the combined influences of various planets. For example, Saturn with its dominion forms a plant of black or gray color. dark, of hard stem and strong taste, a large plant of somber flowers. For said formation it commonly calls upon Mars, and then the plant becomes rough, full of knots, of inflated branches, of wild and tormented aspect. Saturn and Venus produce large trees of great resistance, because the Venusian sweetness provides the matter that will develop in the sulfur of Saturn. If Jupiter is found near Venus, the plant is born strong and full of virtues. If Mercury influences a plant between Venus and Jupiter, then it is even more perfect. It becomes a most beautiful vegetable of medium body, with white or blue flowers. If the Sun approaches the two previously cited, the flower becomes yellow. If Mars shows no opposition to this, the plant is capable of resisting all bad influences and becomes suitable for excellent remedies, although such a combination is usually very rare. If Mars and Saturn oppose Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter, a poisonous tree results, with reddish flowers and often, because of Venus, of rough touch and detestable taste. If, despite Mars and Saturn opposing, Jupiter and Venus manifest their great power and Mercury shows certain weakness, the plant will be hot and of healing virtues. Its stem will be fine at intervals, rough and thorny. Its flowers will be born white. If Venus is close to Saturn, and if the Moon is not in opposition to Mars and Jupiter, we shall then have a pretty, tender, and delicate plant with white flowers, harmless yet of little utility. Chapter 2. Man and the Plant. The world of plants is under the influence of the planets and has the purpose of feeding man and curing diseases. The plant can nourish man, that is, repair his diminished organic forces, in his physical body, in his electromagnetic body, in his astral body. In turn, man can do three things in favor of the plant: cultivate it, redeem it, resurrect it. Alimentation. It is not my intention to make here a defense of vegetarianism. Authors more knowledgeable on the subject and with more authority than I have demonstrated its advantages. I will only take the liberty of indicating some rules dedicated to vegetarian beginners. First, it is advisable to jump from carnivory to vegetarianism with certain slowness and parsimony. Fermented drinks should not be exchanged for milk or water until the change of regimen has been verified. This change should be helped by means of a greater consumption of fleshy and watery fruit. Second, if possible, effect this change of regimen in the countryside. Third, in case one remains in large cities, do not initiate the regimen in taverns or restaurants, and do not do it also if the person suffers from general weakness. Keep in mind that the quantity of vegetable foods must be greater than the animal alimentation that was followed previously. Fifth, to keep fish for a long time in the menus, eggs, milk, and cow's butter must never be absolutely excluded, apart from special cases of asceticism. Sixth, finally, one must learn at the same time to govern the physical organism, and above all, man must be mastered by will. Of the small irregularities of functioning that may occur, instructions on meals, generally speaking, it can be said that the more forces are spent for the fulfillment of an act, the more profitable and useful this act becomes for us. The reason, in a measure of extreme precaution, carrying things at the point of the sword, as is commonly said, it would be fitting that we ourselves cultivate our food plants, perform the harvest, and prepare them, making use of utensils that would serve only for said end. For the naturalist and pantheon initiations that develop this theory, studying it with every detail and great depth, one must begin by purifying and perfecting each one, first his astral body, and finally his intelligence. For this reason, we see that the Brahmins and Hindu ascetics are obliged to prepare their foods themselves, and in no case consent that the copper utensils which constitute their kitchen battery be touched by other hands than their own. From here also proceed the prescriptions regarding the position of the body during the agaps. There exist certain relations between the electromagnetic currents of a planet and the beings or individuals who live under its influence. To enumerate the foundations of this theory, yet we strive for the prescription that advises that the inhabitants of our regions eat with their faces turned toward the north. Another prescription is that which refers to ablutions. The Hindu priests wash their hands, feet, mouth, nose, eyes, and ears, repeating frequently a sacred invocation. This custom in our regions corresponds to the blessing of the table, which, pronounced magically, that is, expressed with true unction from the bottom of the heart, possesses a real and positive value of dynamization. Finally, a last prescription is that of silence, which is observed by religious communities the world over. It has as its purpose, through the concentration of all attention on the act of eating, to reduce the quantity of matter necessary for the meal by means of sensible proportions. In this manner, Digestion requires less activity near the solar plexus, from which results a notable economy of nervous force that the exercises of contemplation need in order to become truly fruitful. But for persons who live in the world and with the world in the heavy atmosphere of the great cities, joy is the best digestive and is worth as much as the best alcohol to stimulate the laziness of the stomach. Therapeutics, the curative virtues of the vegetable kingdom, have been celebrated since the most remote times. In them, a general intuition regarding the particular matter already stood out. The very Hellenic name of the god of medicine, Aesculapius, signified the grove, the hope of health, or, according to Porphyry, the solar faculty of regenerating bodies, or, to express ourselves better, that faculty which repairs the solutions of continuity in human tissues. Plants may be employed in medicine within their three states: living, dead, or resurrected. The living plant serves as a modifier of the center or inner body, principally when it is aromatic. Its perfume tonifies all inflammations of the respiratory mucosae. In this way, consumptives will calm their malaise by breathing the aroma of pines, lavender, rosemary, mint, etc. This is the esoteric employment of living plants. Their exoteric employment is indicated by Paracelsus under the name of diseases. Diseases can be communicated or transported from the person suffering them to any other living being. Although recommended by the great masters of occultism, this practice is pernicious for the spiritual plane of man and of the vegetable. Someday I will expatiate in greater explanations on this subject. For now I shall content myself with passing the modus operandi under the most absolute silence. For wounds and ulcers, persicaria, symphytum officinale, and botanus europaeus, etc. are employed. For toothache, the gums are rubbed until they bleed with root of Senecio vulgaris. For uterine polyps, Polygonum persicaria. For difficult menorrhea, Mentapuligium. For pulmonary phthisis, the oak and the cherry tree. One has arrived nowadays at experimenting with action at a distance upon hypnotic individuals of certain medicinal substances. Witness the works of doctors magnetizers of the first half of the 19th century on this particular. And it is necessary to insist that we present here nothing but isolated examples, which the studious reader will be able to go on multiplying at his pleasure, according to the laws of signs. The harvested plant can be utilized exoterically in juice, in powder, and in infusion. In decoction, boiled in water, it has more active results than in infusion. In magistery, that is, by secret formula and preparation. In tincture combined with alcohol, in quintessence. There are therefore the practical indications regarding this exterior pharmacopoeia extracted from the books of Paracelsus. Any person will be able to perform with them varied experiments and diverse manipulations. And let it always be borne in mind that a vegetable medicament is always so much the more active if its preparation is carried out by a robust person, animated by the desire to cure. Tinctures, decoctions, powders, etc. For the presentation and development of our example, we shall make use of 3 vegetable medicaments: hellebore, pitch, and hemlock. From Paracelsus we transcribe the following. The people have erroneously believed that the plant called hellebore is judged good solely for the cure of madness, whereas it is also most useful to cure and prevent numerous diseases, including to preserve and prolong life. Its efficacy and virtue, observed attentively, become notable for renewing the nature of the body, purifying the blood, and purging it of all types of excesses. In antiquity, hellebore was applied with success, very successful practices being performed with it, which today have fallen into disuse to the detriment of humanity. The reason why it would be worthwhile for hellebore to recover its primitive prestige. In the first place, it is fitting to choose the black hellebore of Theophrastus, which is the rarest and most radical among all its species, according to the opinion of all those who, for long years, practiced the priesthood of medicine. The effects of that one are sweeter and more favorable than those of others known, such as the hellebore of Dioscorides, the white hellebore, or false hellebore, which provided imprecise results in divers trials. One may harvest the root of the black hellebore, cut it, and make with it a paste that will be placed in the air during the night. On the following morning it shall be cooked slowly. After being taken from the fire, it shall be transformed into powder. The weight ought to be half a scudo. It shall be taken hours before meals, 3 or 4 times a year, principally in spring and autumn. This represents a manifest precaution for the evacuation of the filth of the body, from which the most grave indispositions originate, and one may increase the dose if one wishes. One may also cook the leaves and the root of the hellebore with rye bread and transform it to powder, Take it as a corrective. The dose must be from 30 to 40 grams, though it may be more for robust persons, whether in pills, in wafers or tablets, in cooked paste, or by means of another manipulation before the midday meal. The whole plant may also be taken in powder with the measure of weight indicated previously, without any type of preparation, as was the custom in Rome. Said root may be seasoned with meat in a stew, dissolved in soup, or taken diluted in any liquid whatever. It is a manner of depurating oneself well and gently. One may add the quantity one wishes of any ingredient that results in an agreeable flavor. The Huns, to purify their blood, accustomed themselves little by little and imperceptibly to the use of the leaves of black hellebore, gathered at perfect maturity, and they were not ignorant that, mixed with sugar, hellebore, and water, constituted a grand elixir to prolong life and prevent all types of diseases, both external and internal, until the hour of death arrived for them. At the beginning, the dose must be from 10 to 15 grams, increasing gradually until reaching 30. Then, for some time, the 30 grams shall be taken to pass to a more prolonged regimen during which one shall take a dram, some 3.5 milligrams every 6 days. In this manner, the hellebore familiarizes itself with the stomach and, upon losing its great purgative force, transforms into a magnificent restorative. By means of industry, it is reduced to a balsam, and the dose of this balsamic virtue is 10 grams. Most excellent quintessence is drawn from it, superior to all previous preparations of hellebore administered to rejuvenate the body. The portion, in this case, must be 5 to 6 drops, diluted in some appropriate liquor, for example, in melissa or agrimony water. After being well washed and sprinkled with vinegar, a kind of syrup is distilled from the whole plant to purge the black and terrestrial humor, or, rather better said, to separate within nature the pure from the impure, the healthy from the harmful, and to root out every class of ills that proceed therefrom. Said syrup acts with more safety and more effectively than any other purgative. It is preferable to the extract, for although both have no other objective but the action of purging, the latter is not powerful enough to purify all the blood, and subsequently conserve health within a firm stability. To the frequent use of this plant, most particularly of its root, are owed the action against the most terrible diseases and the extraordinary faculty of renewal, the salvation of health. And it is for this reason that we could qualify this remedy as a second universal medicine, provided that the conditions superficially exposed here are taken into account. Tar water, also from Paracelsus, let 1 part of pitch be dissolved in 4 parts of cold water, agitating with a wooden spoon for the space of some 10 minutes. Let said mixture be kept well closed for 24 hours, in order that the pitch may have time to precipitate. The liquid part shall be immediately placed in a bottle, abandoning the rest, which for this case has no utility. One must bear in mind that the tar water, to be perfect, will have to assume the color of light wine, like the so-called white wines of Spain or France. Tar water for external use. Pour 2 pints of boiling water over 1 pint of pitch. Stir everything with a stick or a wooden spoon for 15 minutes. Let it rest for 10 hours, and thereafter it may be used, seeking to keep it well sealed. The tar water may be more or less strong according to necessities or the taste of the consumer. It is employed in lotion against the stone, scabies, ulcers, scrofula, leprosy, and taken as a drink or internal use against the following diseases: smallpox, bloody eruption, ulceration of the intestine, inflammation, gangrene, scurvy, erysipelas, asthma, indigestion, the stone, dropsy, and hysteria. The best pitch is drawn from the pitch pine, a species of fir or pine of the north, which necessitates an especially dry and very elevated terrain. Preparation of hemlock extract. Take some stems and leaves of tender hemlock, squeeze out the juice, set it to evaporate over a slow fire in a pot of baked clay, stirring from time to time. Said decoction shall last until the extract becomes completely thick. Add thereafter a proportional quantity of hemlock powder to be able to form with it a consistent paste with which small pills shall be made. If instead of utilizing tender hemlock one makes the decoction with the same plant but dried, it is quite certain that the preparation will not come to have equal virtue. The medication must be initiated with very small doses, which, little by little, may go on increasing in proportion. After each dose that is taken, seek to ingest some hot liquid such as broth, or else some infusion of cordial flowers. Hemlock leaves, dried and cut, may also be used for external use. They are placed in a small cloth bag and, after leaving it for a few minutes inside a saucepan with boiling water, application is made in compresses on the affected part. All these preparations constitute perfect sedatives for which one shall use the called Cicuta officinarum, Cicuta vira, or Conium maculatum, or its Conium staminibus striatus. Theophrastus guarantees that the best hemlock grows in the shade and in cold terrains. This is what occurs with that of Vienna, Austria, while that of the surroundings of Soissons is much more active than that of Paris and that of Italy. Hippocrates, Galen, Avicenna, and an infinity of other physicians belonging also to antiquity, the Middle Ages, or the Renaissance, employed hemlock as a medication for internal use to resolve tumors, for colics of every species, and to calm the ardors of the womb. Also, our grandparents made much use of these cases and as a tonic in general of a quintessence of celandine, of melissa, of valerian, of betony, of saffron, and of aloes. Prohibitions. It is known that, according to the medicine of the ancients, the astrological conditions at the moment of the harvesting of plants influenced extraordinarily the virtues thereof. Said practices were strictly prohibited by the Church in the canons, drawn from the penitential books of Theodore, Archbishop of Canterbury, of the Venerable Bede, of Rabbinus, Bishop of Mainz, of Halitgar, Bishop of Cambrai, from the collection published by Luke Diaconus, from that of Isaac, Bishop of Langres, of Egbert, Archbishop of York, from the 19th book of the Decree of Burchard, from the 15th part of the Decree of Ivio, Bishop of Chartres. We encounter sufficient data demonstrating the unanimity of criteria in condemning all those. A condemnation that consisted of 2 years of penitence on the feasts of precept of the Church, and for those who gathered medicinal herbs, added to the act of collection words of enchantment, the penitence was 20 days. J. F. Bonham, apostolic visitor under the pontificate of Gregory XIII, in his decrees printed in Vercale 1579, prohibits the collection of fern or fern seed and of divers other plants on a determined day or determined night, particularly when one holds the thought that said plants cannot be collected at another time under pain of losing their virtues and efficacy, he says. If there be any one guilty of such superstitions, he says, he shall be punished severely in accordance with the judgment of the ordinary of the place. Needless to say that for the initiate, for the magus, for the adept, this class of prohibitions has no value, due to their puerile importance. For the mystic, they correspond to a reality, and he fulfills them, following, however, always other reasons of a higher order than those of the simple obedience of a faithful Catholic. Harvest. The night of the Eve of St. John is very good for the harvest of all sorts of plants and herbs. On the other hand, each plant has some special days during the year, in which its force is found more exalted, and also the hours of the night are more propitious and favorable to them. The plants may be harvested after having been consecrated by means of words and Kabbalistic signs appropriate to their astral signification. They are torn immediately from the earth or cut with a special knife, indicating the end to which they are destined. The Church's prohibitions regarding these ceremonies have their reason for being or their well-founded motives, which are very secret, known to very few people. In this respect, it suffices to record that, from the truly mystical point of view, and on the plane of divinity, every act of magic is an act of rebellion, and for this very reason will be the object of repression on the part of those who proclaim its abstention. The hermetic treatment of plants. Once gathered, it distinguishes itself totally from ordinary pharmaceutical manipulation. Its end does not consist solely of disposing of the physical qualities of the plant's juices in the most profitable manner, but rather in liberating the living force, the essence, the soul, or the balsam of the plant, as the ancient Hermetists used to say. The balsam is the essential oil of the plants. It is neither common oil, nor salt, nor earth, nor water, but rather something very subtle, the vehicle of the astral body. And this balsam is obtained by means of fire, and not by fermentation. Baume said balsam is that which Paracelsus calls an arcanum, that is, a fixed substance, immortal, and in a certain mode incorporeal, which modifies, restores, and preserves bodies. This force is found covered by a tincture, which is obtained by the reduction of the plant from its second matter to its primitive matter, or as Paracelsus says, from the cagastrum to the elistrum. To tell the truth, the curative power of a plant resides in its spirit. Thus, therefore, in its natural state, the activity of its spirit is curbed and its light obscured by the dress of matter. It is then necessary to destroy these useless rags, or at least exchange them for something purer and more fixed. And this change or transmutation is effected by means of a concoction during which one adds a substance capable of absorbing all manner of impurities. The choice of said substance must be dictated by the consideration that the flavor of a plant indicates the hunger that devours it, that is, the ideal type toward which it tends. It will be necessary to observe consequently the coction with a mineral salt of the same planetary force. 3 things are obtained by means of said coction: a salt, a first matter, and a mercury that is a fixed water. We burn the plants, says St. Thomas in his Opusculum, the philosopher's stone, in the calcination furnace, and subsequently transform all this into water, which we distill and coagulate, until converting it into a stone endowed with virtues of greater or lesser amplitude, according to the virtues of the plants employed, and their diversity. There exist 3 salts or vegetable powers particularly useful to therapeutics. Namely, the first is Jupiterin, of good perfume and good taste. It is produced internally by a force of divine expansion and externally by the sun and by Venus. But this salt is not sufficiently strong to cure by itself. It is the enemy of the venomous life produced by certain fires and determines harmony or an approximation towards sweetness. The salt of Mars is bitter, igneous, and astringent. The salt of Mercury is dynamic and determines the healthiest reactions. Jupiter and Venus are the antidotes of these last 2. The first matter that is extracted subsequently from the plants is nutritive. It is almost always an oil with which the temperament of the patient recovers strength and vigor. Finally, the mercury of life is regenerative and vivifying. It can only be extracted from almost perfect plants of sweet flavor and influenced by the sun, by Venus, and by Jupiter. Plants of strong coarseness do not attack the root of this mercury. That is why they do not develop except by virtue of the 4 elements, whereas this mercury reaches as far as the astral body. We give, below, a general system for the preparation of plants. The operator ought to modify it according to the elemental quality of each one of them. Once gathered and cut into small pieces, one puts the plant to soften in hot salted water for 1 day in a dark place. After having been in infusion in alcohol, in the sun, during a week, one keeps aside the solid residues, the softening water, etc. One prepares 2 vessels joined by the neck, wrapped in black rag. After introducing the liquids and residues, one puts them to heat with a constant heat of 39 to 40 degrees during 3 weeks. Whatever the plant may be, a liquor that is quite thick, fixed, and of a reddish color must be achieved. The gases, as well as the liquids and solids obtained by this process, possess special marvelous qualities. Cure. As a general rule, it is better to employ the salts of Mars and Mercury, as they are more active, uniting them through Venus and Jupiter, so that they find a means to extinguish the fire of their color. When this has been achieved, the cure is realized, that is, harmony has re-established itself, and only a little sun will be necessary to put everything in motion. The physician must know that good plants can be debased by an evil manner of looking from Saturn and Mars, and that poisonous plants can frequently become beneficial thanks to the sun, to Jupiter, and to Venus in cures. One must always have in mind, like for like, similia similibus curantur, for one must never prescribe a plant of Venus for a disease of Saturn. On the contrary, let an herb be administered which, benefited by the wrath of Mars, comes from Jupiter or from Venus. For the more ardent a plant is, the better results it will give for cures, provided that its choler has been transformed into love, since death will supervene promptly if the poison falls within the property of Mercury. Prima mens melissae, according to Paracelsus. Take a pint, half a liter of pure potassium carbonate. Expose it to the sun until it dissolves. Filter it subsequently and add a good quantity of melissa leaves that will submerge totally in the liquid. Put everything over a slow fire in a closed place during 24 hours. Filter again, pouring a quantity of alcohol over the liquid. Wait 2 or more days until the alcohol has assumed a greenish color. Remove afterwards said alcohol, exchanging it for another until nothing of the green color remains. Then one will distill, evaporating, and a juice of thick consistency like a syrup will remain. It is an indispensable condition that the alcohol and the alkali be of an absolute purity and a very concentrated essence. One of the most active antidotes against the effects of certain plants is constituted by the one that puts alcohol and tartar to heat at a gentle yet constant temperature. The tartar distills a species of reddish oil endowed with particular properties. This oil is indicated as an excellent antidote for the case of swallows. They are taken at slight intervals. Magic. All the magic of the vegetable kingdom resides in the knowledge of the spirits of the plants. Antiquity knew them under the names of dryads, hamadryads, sylvans, fauns. They are the Duci of St. Augustine, the fairies of the Middle Ages, the Dŵr Oich of the Gauls, the Grove Maidens of the Irish. Paracelsus gives the name of sylvesters to the inhabitants of the woods, and that of nymphs to those of aquatic plants. These beings belong to the class of those whom occultism classifies as elementals. They are the inhabitants of the astral plane who aspire to elevate themselves to the human condition. They are endowed with a species of instinctive intelligence and very informed at the same time as the material being to which they are linked. It is these that the ancient Rosicrucians utilized in their miraculous cures. For, by title of servants, they obeyed with all natural. Their power is so great over the material plane because they inhabit the limit of said plane and the astral plane. They can effect cures and surprising visions, in the same way that the elements of the mineral kingdom produce, when they are well directed, all the phenomena of alchemy, and those of the animal kingdom, the majority of the manifestations of the spirit. Religious magic. Vegetal symbolism is found extensively exposed in the sacred books of ancient religions. It is sufficient for us to recall the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the life-giving tree of Eden, symbols of the two systems Adam could have followed to fulfill his mission in the world, the Sephirothic tree of the Kabbalah, the Aswatha, or sacred fig tree, symbol of supreme knowledge, the Homa of the Mazdians, by which Zoroaster represented the blood method and the nervous system of man and the universe, the Zampan of Tibet, Yggdrasil, the oak of the Pharisees and of the ancient Celts. All these symbols applied to plants possess various different meanings. In order not to stray too far from our objective, we shall cite only that which refers to mental development. All legends of a religious character represent adepts acquiring omniscience beneath a tree. Only Christ, who signifies, among other things, science itself, ceases to appear under said symbolism. In reality, the reason for this is quite doubtful, tending toward the very definition of the creature, or, if we prefer, to the dual utility and dual use one may make of one's free will. Thus, we see that complete religious symbolism requires the expression of two trees. The Kabbalistic or Egyptian tradition indicates this, as it had to be crowned with the descent of the Son of God. The other traditions constituting the heritage of races in the process of disintegration do not signal in their external formulas more than the tree of knowledge. According to naturalist initiations, this latter is nothing other than the image of the inner man. Its trunk represents the spinal cord. Its branches are the 72,000 nerves known to Hindu yogis. Furthermore, it has 7 flowers which are the 7 centers of the astral body. Its leaves are the dual respiratory apparatus enclosed by the lungs. Its roots the genital pole and the legs. Its S-ape is the cosmic electricity that runs through the nerves and appears from the cerebral ether to the spermatic earth. The word yoga is synonymous with the word religion. In Sanskrit, both signify the point that unites man to the universe and to God. Its process is the same as that by which a seed gathers, from formless and obscure terrain, the molecules with which it will form a beautiful and aromatic flower, according to the ideal of the practitioner. Yoga transforms the impure molecules of the physical body into fixed and unalterable molecules, base passions into pure enthusiasm, and intellectual ignorance into the light of truth. This is the reason why the masters of yoga are depicted beneath a sacred tree. Natural magic. The different exoteric traditions teach various uses of hidden plant forces. The plant may be employed according to its entire individualization, or by one of its essential parts. The first method refers to the species of pact much in vogue among the indigenous peoples of Central America, New Guinea, New Zealand, India, and Germany, through which the destiny of a newborn is linked to this or that tree. In this way, a species of intimate and close life union develops between these two creatures. The child benefits from the tree's vigor, but if the latter receives any wound, the former feels it, suffers, and eventually dies. Magic trees. There is not a single person in India that does not have its magic tree, to whose genius individuals of the lower classes render true worship. Hellenic traditions also stated that every forest has its genius and every tree its nymph, nor is it rare to see, upon the Nilgiris, some large tree with grotesque figures drawn in traces of minium and blue, with 3 large stones painted red, placed at the bottom of its trunk. These trees are places of sacrifice and adoration. In them, one frequently finds animal remains and locks of hair offered by the sick and the possessed. The natives call these guardian spirits of such trees monosporans. These are commonly beneficial spirits, but they possess very reduced magical power, for they are limited to a single and specific object. From time to time, the natives consecrate some of their children to said Genyi for a period of 7 years. At the end of this term, they offer a great sacrifice to it, leaving the child's hair suspended in the tree. These trees belong almost always to the ilex family. Sometimes they are of the so-called wild cinnamomum, and those known under the name of Eugenia are also found in the same case. Filters. Under the name of filters, we may designate all sorts of potions in whose composition enter substances prepared magically for the occult attainment of a specific desire. The 3 kingdoms of nature provide numerous materials for said preparations. However, we shall concern ourselves solely with the substances provided by the vegetable kingdom. Pomades, electuaries, ointments, collyriums, or magic potions proceed almost entirely from the domain of black magic. Their number is very large and may furthermore be increased by an intelligent mage. Thus, we see how Chinese priests, for all uses of medicine, psychology, and magic, employ only 13 vegetable, animal, and mineral substances. They know how to derive an infinity of combinations. These preparations may be employed upon oneself or upon other persons. All act upon the astral body and, from it, upon one of its 3 foci, the instinctive, that produce health, disease, and all possible physiological phenomena. In the second place, they produce love, hatred, and the other passions. In the third place, they provoke phenomena of somnambulism, clairvoyance, clairaudience, psychometry, and other orders even more extraordinary. Folklore, tales of witchcraft, and the accounts that everyone has had the opportunity to hear regarding poisonings and assassinations at a distance of animals or persons find their explanation in the action of these magic substances acting upon the instinctive center, and the same may be said regarding love filters. But the use of plants to provoke psychic phenomena is less known. This art is still practiced in the East nowadays, the majority of Buddhist convents, by Chinese Taoists, Tibetan Lamas, the Tantris of Bhutan, the shamans of Turkestan, and certain confraternities of Muslims, dervishes, not counting the instinctive use made of it by almost all savage tribes of various continents. Hashish and opium are 2 of the best-known plants among vegetable substances with special particularities for mental action. However, in the West, no one has knowledge of the manipulation to which they are subjected, unless they have been initiated in the Far East itself. The accounts of De Quincey or Baudelaire, without dimming the merit of their art and sincerity, reveal to us no secret regarding the possibilities of such remedies. The only thing we can observe regarding this particular is that the use of these drugs cannot lead to intellectual ecstasy other than in the case where the individual has known, previously, without excitement and by the sole force of his will, how to become master and lord of his mental forces and feel capable of governing the association of ideas, and in reality this is not too easy a task. Were it not so, if one accustomed to hashish takes it without previously fixing the understanding, it is certain that he launches himself into adventure as if sailing in a rudderless boat upon an ocean much more terrible than the Indian Sea, with its cyclones and storms, and he may arrive at the harbor of madness, or, what is worse, may never return. Ragon, the great modern interpreter of Freemasonry, exposed in one of his works some new experiments. He took discs of various colors, anointed them with a thick juice of different plants, and presented them before persons in a magnetic state, so that they might contemplate them. Here is the result of said experiments. Violet disc, henbane, belladonna, stramonium, continuous movement of arms and legs, desire to touch a specific object or to walk to a fixed point, screams, howling, urges to bite or stab, intoxication, appearance of states of bliss, realization of all kinds of desires. The memory persists too. Indigo disc, pepper, black hellebore, hashish, febrile excitement, weakness in the legs. The individual kneels down and wants to pray but cannot remember a single word. Loss of vision, eyelids tremble, eyes close, deep sleep, wakes up sweating copiously. Blue disc, cherry, laurel, camphor, asafoetida, general excitement, convulsive movements, desires to sleep, loss of consciousness, drowsiness, dejection, wakes up dizzy, remembers nothing. Green disc, strychnine, belladonna, aconite, abundant tears, hands contort, desires to run faster than a horse, general shivering of the limbs, says goodbye, as if dying, swelling, lethargic state. Yellow disc. Opium, strychnine, white hellebore, rhythmic movement of the head, swelling, Sleep when asked to open his eyes. The presence of the disc makes him furious. Voluptuous dreams, chills, extreme pallor, dejection, sleep again, magnetic state, no memory. Orange disc, valerian, tobacco, poppy. Great joys, swelling of the limbs, sleep being forced to open his eyes. The disc gives him the urge to laugh, an uninterrupted laughter, inexplicable moral suffering, weeping spells, lucidity, wakes up torpid. Red disc, plum tree, lavender, foxglove. Fear, shrinking away, fears because of hidden people, piercing screams, eyes staring wildly, cramps that last more than an hour, delay in coming to. These are the experiments carried out by Ragan, the trial of which we would advise no one to repeat. As can be seen, their results could not be more disastrous, and the only thing achieved is to destroy the nervous system of the unhappy individuals, under the false pretext of an immediate scientific utility. We reprove in equal manner all practices of natural and physical magic, save in cases of therapeutics. The satisfaction of a love or a hatred, the vain acquisition of an intellectual knowledge, do not constitute, on the other hand, things so important that one may in their name curtail the exercise of free will and the normal development of the laws of the universe. Only one thing is necessary to love God and one's neighbor. All else is vain and perishable, which is ointment. As a curiosity, let us see below some information we have drawn from a very little-known book we had the opportunity to consult in the library of a clear friend of ours. Among the simple substances the devil uses to disturb the senses of his slaves, of which some possess the virtue of causing deep sleep, and others suggest figures and representations, both when awake and sleeping, the following seem to have greater importance. They are belladonna root, furious nightshade, that's blood, poppy, parsley, thuja, cinquefoil, sweet flag, white poplar, opium, henbane, hemlock, the species of poppy, the heroe, and the synoxatide, which make the specters of hell appear, that is, the evil spirits, just as, conversely, the anaxatide provokes the images of the holy angels. Within the diabolical pharmacopoeia, Nienold recognizes 3 types of ointments. Those of the first type, which provoke only dreams, are composed of reptile fat, parsley, aconite, zinc foil, nightshade, and little fungi, vermicules that are created in fungi. By virtue of the ointments of the second type, the devil convinces witches that once anointed, they will be able to undertake raids through the air, riding a broom or a stick, and head to their respect synagogues, passing through the hole of the chimneys. It is worth contesting that in the composition of said ointment, nothing enters but simple narcotics, but they possess the virtue of disturbing the senses. Mixing them with certain strange substances, such as, for example, wine in large quantities, cat brains, belladonna, and other things, I keep silent for fear of giving occasion to bad people to cause harm to their fellow men. The third ointment is facilitated by the devil to witches, persuading them that once anointed with it, they will transform into animals and be able to run thus through the fields. In its composition enter parts of the body of a toad, a snake, a hedgehog, a fox, a human, blood, some herbs and roots, regarding all of which Nienold does not provide the dose. Councillor Eckhart Schausen, who lived at the end of the 18th century, gives the following formula to provoke apparitions: pills composed of hemlock, henbane, saffron, aloes, celery, mandrake, poppy, asafoetida, and parsley. All these plants, dried and burned. Against evil spirits, the most indicated is asafoetida, castoreum, and vinegar. Nienold himself, in Chapter 7 of his work, records the following perfume formulas: to see rare and strange things, heather root, juice of hemlock, of henbane, and black poppy seed; to see future things, linseed and psyllium seed, violet and celery roots; to see evil spirits driven away, calamint, peony, mint, and palma Christi should be burned, squid gall, thyme, rose, and a little aloes, and then throw water over it. The house will appear as if it had been completely filled with water. If blood is thrown, it will give the illusion of being full of blood. If a handful of earth is thrown, the floor of the house seems to move as if producing a perceptible tremor. Magical agronomy, occult cultivation of plants. There exists a magical agriculture whose precepts and practical system, or modus operandi, have been forgotten. The foundation of this art consists in sowing the grain in the exact matrix that is complementary to it, and that for this very reason corresponds to it. Just as within a regime of mysticism, the man who has found his celestial type converts himself by this mere fact into a powerful executor of works and an admirable orator, the seed thrown into its proper or convenient earth reaches its greatest generic perfection. The sowings are done under the auspices of Saturn. The ancient plowman called the seed Sat and the sower Satyr. To sow means the same as to intern someone in darkness, in the deep, and in the mystery. The shadows provoke the light, and the shapeless mass of the putrefied cotyledons calls forth the flower radiant with color, and perfumes o'er the majestic and full canopied tree. Let us see what happens in the great majority of sowing cases. That is, when the earth does not correspond entirely to the germ entrusted to it previously. We have already seen that the subterranean development of this verifies itself under the influence of the salt, the sulfur, and the mercury of the earth. The sun is present there, as universal creator of life, but its invisible vital rays are not assimilable by the grain hidden under the earth, except when they appear to it in the quality of complementary correspondence with the same. We arrive, then, at the conclusion that, if the earth where the grain lies does not satisfy these conditions, the ends of the germ extends its small roots, exhausting its forces in search of that which it needs and does not find in its immediate proximity. Then the root grows dry and wrinkled in the same way as the stem, the salt, the sulfur, and the mercury consume themselves and consume without result. The solar life that reaches them under an inferior quality not assimilable by them can remedy this fundamental inconvenience in two ways, choosing with care the earth that is appropriate to the germ it will have to fecundate, or, if the plant has already germinated, providing it with a vital stimulant. In the former case, it is advisable to know thoroughly both the proportion of participation of salt, sulfur, and mercury in the composition of the soil and the germinating grain, as well as the chemical composition involved in both. In the latter case, during the preparation of the stone, particularly via the dry path, diverse residual liquids are produced that perform quite the function of physicians for wretched or sickly plants. We shall make mention of all this in a separate chapter when discussing the magical growth of plants. Beyond the plant's relationship with the sun that physically nourishes it, one must choose a society for it that is propitious. Certain plants prosper living alongside others, yet die if their neighbors are antipathetic to them. A question of affinity or antipathy is deduced, as we could demonstrate with multiple examples. The following having been confirmed by daily experimentation: the olive tree is a friend to the vine and wishes to be far from the cabbage. The ranunculus, the anemone are intimate friends of the water lily. The rue desires to live near the fig tree. Finally, exterior agents and light in particular also exercise their powerful influence upon vegetable life. The blue ray of the spectrum activates vegetation while the yellow ray retards it. Camille Flammarion conducted conclusive and most notable experiments on this point. Harvesting of plants, sound astrology, planets under whose influence they fall and when the malefic stars are outside the range of action. The small dictionary found at the end of the work will indicate the various cases that may arise. Magical growth of plants. Dr. Carl Duprel cites the following passage from Simon Magus: "With but a gesture of mine, the earth covers itself with vegetation. Trees grow before the eyes of mortals. My power is such that I make hair sprout from the beards of ephebes. More than once I have caused bushes that had not yet emerged from Mother Earth to grow rapidly in an instant." Christopher Langens relates the following fact. In one of the accounts of his interesting travels, a fakir requested a china apple. Holding it in his hand, he opened it, removed one of its seeds, and placed it beneath the earth. After having sprinkled it slightly with the fruit, he covered the patch of earth with a small basket, placed a small portion of tobacco in his mouth, and adjusting a wax thread to his lips, ran it several times through the moistened tobacco. A few moments later, he lifted the basket from the ground and, to the surprise of all present, showed us that a plant had grown in the earth within the scant time of half an hour. He covered the plant again, made some strange gestures, and pronounced some mysterious words. When he raised the basket again, we saw that the plant, in addition to having grown rapidly, had adorned itself with magnificent fragrant flowers. The companions of the extraordinary fakir then joined him in his gestures and movements, and we were able to observe immediately that the plant was already a grown tree and that exuberant fruits were emerging from it. In order to ripen them, the fakir began to give a new smoke bath to his marvelous thread. After about 15 minutes, he offered us 5 apples of splendid beauty and perfect ripeness. I tasted one of them and can affirm that I found it very similar to natural fruits. The commissioner kept one for himself as a souvenir. The fakir then pulled up the tree by the root and threw it into the water. Let us look at another proof. witnessed by a traveler of our time. It is related to us by J. Hingston in his work, The Australian Abroad. From the terrace of one of the hotels on the main street, I saw a group of street performers crouching on the ground. One of them placed a nut in the earth upon the flagstones and covered it with 2 pieces of cloth, which he lifted several times in order to dispel any idea of trickery from the spectators. The nut split in half and gradually transformed until, after about 10 minutes, it converted into a small bush with its leaves and roots. Facts similar to these have been observed in Europe itself. In 1715, a physician named Agricola conducted the following experiments in Regensburg, in the presence of the Count of Radoslaw. Possessing only 12 lemons, he caused 12 lemon trees to grow with their roots, branches, leaves, and fruits. He also performed the same experiment with apples, peaches, and apricots, whose trees he caused to grow to the height of 4 or 5 feet. To complete the rest of the lecture, destined for this class of experiments, he presented 15 almonds in a germinal state and made them grow in full view of the public, thus magically continuing their normal development as if they were underground, yet with extraordinary acceleration. We shall conclude these marvelous accounts by explaining another even more stupendous one, if possible, in which the protagonist of the phenomenon is a ghost. The details we are about to transcribe were also taken from the work of Dr. Duprel, the famous scholar who heard them from the lips of an eyewitness in a spiritist center. An English medium misobtained the materialization of a spirit who called herself Yolanda. During one of her materializations, the ghost asked for a bottle of water and sand. She poured the water and sand into the bottle and placed it on the floor, describing a few circular steps around it. Immediately, she placed some seeds of Ixora crocata and Anthurium schertzerianum upon a piece of white cloth and withdrew to the dark room from whence she had appeared. Instantly, we saw something move inside the bottle. Yolanda showed us a plant with its green leaves, roots, and buds. The bottle was thrown to the ground, and the ghost entered the dark room again. At most 4 or 5 minutes elapsed, and behold, all present, numbering more than 20, were able to examine within entire freedom the small plants about 6 inches in height with fresh and brilliant flowers. Similar accounts may be read in the books of Tavernier, Travels in Turkey, of Dupotet, Journal du Magnétisme, of Gauguinot de Mousseau's The High Phenomena of Magic, etc., as well as the well-known experiments of Lewis, whose works are profusely disseminated throughout the world. These equally confirm the ancient accounts, nor do the most prominent philosophers manifest themselves theoretically as adversaries of such experiments. We know, says Edward von Hartmann, that the psychological functions of vegetable life can be powerfully excited by means of light rays of great force, availing ourselves of electricity or chemical reactions, and that something of this also happens with man. A child of 4 years may achieve the development of a person of 30, and certain fruits that as a rule grow swiftly can, by artificial means, reach a more accelerated maturation. From this, the possibility is deduced that mediumistic force also operates in an analogous manner. Dr. Duprel, from whom we have taken all these citations, constructs in the following manner a theory that may be more interesting. Just as with intellectual life, organic life in man offers the example of the action of an accelerating power, analogous to that which we studied when treating of plants. Our author refers to a citation made by himself in another work, La philosophie de la mystique. It concerns the alteration of time in certain dream phenomena, during which various tableaus or scenes pass before our eyes, and whose procession lasts, seemingly many hours, when in reality their duration is so diminutive that it is merely a matter of seconds. Man passes through a biological process that, in external nature, lasts millions of years. Consult Anthropogeny by Haeckel. Why should it be impossible for a trained will to build around a vegetable or animal, and even a mineral if we wish, an invisible matter that provides said entities with much more dynamic, that is to say, more spiritual, foods? This is what the fakir does, according to what Dr. Incas asserts in his treatise on practical magic. It is with his own life that he causes the seed upon which he places his hand to develop at that instant. His soul finds itself concentrated in a kind of living fire of his astral body, called in Sanskrit the Swadhisthana chakra. And these are the forces of vegetative life that nourish and develop the phenomenon before the marveling man. Instead of borrowing the materials of said invisible foods from a human organism, one may seek those of nature. It is then that alchemy employs its processes. Here are a couple of formulas taken from a masterful treatise on this art Mars, and 1 ounce of Venus. Soften them at 75 degrees in a thick glass globe and add to the green or crimson caput mortuum a quantity of greenish solvent liquor. Distill for a long time and distill again down to the dregs 5 or 6 times so that nothing remains in the recipient. The evaporation will transform into a fixed and red salt. If seeds are placed in a pan containing salted water and a little of said salt is added, the seeds will germinate rapidly and a shrub will be born with leaves of golden reflections and magnificent fruits, potable gold. For plants, we shall transcribe one of the numerous known formulas to compose this precious liquor. Take a quantity of alchemically prepared sulfur, somewhat gelatinous at the beginning. The mass melts again, is distilled, and we see that it leaves a residue. Collect this residue and mix it intimately with the salt until it transforms into a paste. Then distill the mixture. By means of a high temperature, pass the caput mortuum through a sieve, repeating this operation until the distillation produces nothing but an insipid water. Combining this formula with pure alcohol as is done with salt of tartar, one obtains an oil and a water which must be separated. This water dissolves the salt of gold and, once it is well saturated with metal, results in an excellent liquid with which one waters sick vines, fruit trees that grow little, etc. Palingenesis, little or much. There are already those who occupy themselves at present with the mysterious problems of the biology of the 3 lower kingdoms of nature. The most intuitive of our contemporaries are convinced that there is something behind official botany and zoology. This something, the great initiates of all times, new and at least in glimmers, allowed to shine forth in the world. If alchemy is celebrated in the history of the scientific development of our West, occult botany is much less known, and occult zoology is ignored almost completely. Despite this, all 3 exist as successive developments of a single notion, terrestrial life. For each of the 3 kingdoms of this life, one may reconstitute the art and science that were consecrated to them in the ancient temples of wisdom. But this is not the most adequate place to build seductive hypotheses. In the vanished syntheses, we shall seek nothing other than the materials we need to construct the theory of our objective. Between the material world and the acts as an intermediary, which is the astral world. This astral world, which lavishes and repeats itself through the 3 kingdoms of nature, is called, according to Paracelsus, leafas for vegetables, and, combined with its vital force, constitutes the ines primum which possesses the highest curative virtues, and it is this, and nothing else, that is the true objective of palingenesis. As one can see, it is a triple art which consists of making the soul revive, that is simply the phantom of the plant, or else making the body and soul of the plant revive, or in the final analysis creating it with materials taken from the mineral kingdom. We shall present some palingenetic recipes that refer in their entirety to the first work, knowledge of any writing regarding the resurrection and physical creation of plants. A certain Pole knew the art of enclosing the phantoms of plants within his flasks, so that whenever it pleased him, he made a plant appear in a flask. Each vessel contained its shrub at the bottom, and likewise the little earth resembling ash appeared. All this hermetically sealed. When he wished to expose the shrub before someone, he would gently heat the lower part of the flask. The heat penetrating it caused a stem to issue from the bosom of the muddy matter. Then branches followed by leaves and flowers, according to the nature of the plant whose soul he had enclosed, and this vision remained intact before the eyes of the spectators as long as the exciting heat lasted. It is invariably upon the morphic pattern of the plant, upon its sidereal or potential body, the substrate of visible matter itself, reduced to the state of caput mortuum, that the vegetable phantom outlines itself in ephemeral objectification in the first case, and which, in the other case, presides in a vegetative mode over the molecular grouping of nascent matter. In the Great Book of Nature, published in the last century under the auspices of the mystical Rosicrucian sect, we find all phases of the spagyric operation necessary to arrive at obtaining the vegetable phoenix. It is the vessel prepared for the proof of palingenesis that the author cites by means of this metaphor. As for the essential manipulations, it is with reservations that we shall reveal the recipe, seeking to summarize the detail of the minute prescriptions formulated from page 15 to page 19. First, one must grind well in a mortar 4 pounds of well-ripe grain of the plant from which one wishes to draw the soul. Then one shall seek to preserve the resulting paste at the bottom of a very transparent and very clean vessel. Second, one day at dusk, If the atmosphere is quite pure and the sky appears very serene, Exposé said, product to the nocturnal humidity, so that it impregnates itself with the vivifying virtue that exists in the dew. Third and fourth, great care shall be taken to collect and filter a good quantity of said dew, provided, however, it is before sunrise, because the sun would aspire the most precious part, which is extraordinarily volatile. Fifth, immediately following, distill the filtered liquid. From the residue or dregs it is convenient that one knows how to extract a very strange salt, yet of a very pleasant appearance. Sprinkle the grains with the product of the said distillation previously saturated with the salt in question. Immediately introduce the vessel, hermetically sealed with borax and ground glass, into the manure of a stable. Seventh, after a month, the grain will have transformed into a kind of gelatine. The spirit will be like the skin of divers, colors that will float amidst all the matter between the skin and the muddy substance at the bottom of the vessel. A kind of greenish dew will be observed, which will represent a harvest field when the fermentation reaches this point. The mixture produced within its vessel, which shall remain exactly closed, will be exposed by day to the ardors of the sun, and by night to lunar irradiation. During rainy periods, it is necessary to transfer the vessel, placing it in a dry and temperate place, until good weather returns. For the operation to be perfect, several months must elapse under said conditions, preferably a year, until it is observed that the mixture has doubled its size and the film has disappeared. Then it will be a sign that success will not be long in coming. In its last state of elaboration, the matter must appear as a powder and bluish in color. It is through said powder that the stalk or trunk, the branches, and the leaves of the plant rise at the moment the vessel is placed on a slow fire. It is thus that the vegetable phoenix is formed. The palingenesis of plants would be nothing but an object of amusement were this operation not to offer a glimpse of other greater and more useful things. Through its art, chemistry can revive certain bodies. Some of them are destroyed by it through fire, but we see how it immediately returns their primitive form to them. The transmutation of metals and the philosopher's stone are a consequence of metallic palingenesis. With animals the same is done, but although I strive with great strength, I cannot explain it through words. The most wonderful thing that palingenesis contains is the art of practicing upon the remains of animals. What enormous pleasure to be able to perpetuate the shadow, the specter of a friend, when he has already ceased to exist. Artemisia swallowed the ashes of Mausolus, and that was because she was ignorant of the secret of her own grief. Let us fix our attention on the extraordinary value of this rapid indication. The homogeneity of universal nature authorizes man to be able to infer by analogy, and if he has reasoned well, experience always confirms his inductions. Therefore, what happens in the vegetable kingdom must parallelly be in the lower and higher kingdoms. Thus is justified in one the transmutation of metals, and in the other the posthumous reviviscence of disappeared forms. Despite the great enthusiasm that such high perspectives may excite, we must agree that the practice of palingenesis is not exempt from dangers from the moral point of view, since sooner or later it charges and very dearly its favors to its disciples. We shall complete our study on such interesting matter with a summary of the work Historical and Practical Palingenesis, authored by Professor Karl Kieswetter, illustrious chemist, profound occultist, and great admirer of Paracelsus. Ourself, by the example offered to us by Dr. Duprel in his articles on the acceleration of the vegetation of plants and on the phoenix of plants, we believe that it will not fail to arouse the interest of our readers if we present a small summary, both of the historical part of the theories and experiments relative to palingenesis, as well as of the executed practices. Thus, thanks to my personal proofs, which would be prolix to enumerate, my readers will be in a condition to be able to perceive the importance that the subject occupying us may have. On this point, I find myself precisely in a condition to clarify it, since for very many years it was possible for me to gather various experiments of great efficacy and difficult to be discovered by the majority of people. Although all are unpublished, I sought to eliminate from them everything that in previous eras could be confused with something that was not precisely palingenesis. For example, the phenomena of generatio equivoca of arborescent metallic precipitates and of crystallization, all those things, in whose name one can place the palingenesis of nettles in the frozen lie of their salt, of which Joseph Duchesne, called in Latin Quercetanus, physician to Henry IV of France, makes mention, Right at the start, we shall distinguish two different classes of palingenesis. First, the palingenesis of shadows, which has as its object the production of the astral body, both vegetable and animal. Second, the palingenesis of bodies, which implies the acceleration of the vegetation of plants, forced vegetation, and which at the same time tends toward the reconstitution of destroyed organized bodies. In its final consequences, this latter penetrates the domain of the homunculus, that chemical evocation of the human being, the point where the extremes of mysticism and materialism meet. Ovid already treated this subject of forced vegetation in exact terms when he said, speaking of his Medea, with all these substances and 1,000 others that it is impossible to enumerate, she brews the filter destined for the dying old man. Then, with an olive branch dry and leafless, she agitates the contents from the bottom to the surface. But behold, suddenly the olive branch agitated within the boiling cauldron begins to turn green again, and immediately it is all covered in sap. And everywhere where the fire makes foam exit the cauldron, as some burning drops fall upon the ground, one sees the vernal turf be born, and the flowers open as if in the middle of a beautiful meadow. Alchemists instituted palingenetic experiments. Abu Bekr al-Razi, better known as Rhazes, deceased in 942, and Albert the Great also occupied themselves quite preferentially with these wonderful phenomena. Furthermore, of this latter alchemist, it is even affirmed that he made the detailed description of the homunculus. In the book titled The Vegetable Work by Isaac Hollandus, several observations on palingenesis appear. Only in Paracelsus do we find some more detailed indications regarding the two classes of palingenesis. With reference to the palingenesis of shadows, he expresses himself in the following terms. From this it is deduced that a force praemientis of first entity is found enclosed in a vessel and brought to this point that it can generate the birth inside this same vessel of a form of the same plant, and without the concurrence of a third. That when this plant has arrived at the end of its growth, what it generated is not precisely a corpus body, provided that as a first cause, it did not have a liquidum terrae, and its sediment is something that has no existence other than to the sight, a thing that the finger converts into a state of juice. It is nothing more than a fume affecting the form of a substance, but which never offers corporeal presence, that is to say, something immaterial which is not susceptible to impressing the sense of touch. Paracelsus offers us no information regarding the palingenesis of shadows. Quite the contrary, he always limits himself to that of bodies when he says, take a bird recently hatched from the egg, shut it hermetically in a metal vessel, and reduce it to ashes by means of a convenient fire. Introduce next the container with the ashes of the bird into a heap of horse manure, and leave it there until a viscous substance forms, produced by the ash and the empyreumatic oils. Place afterward said substance inside an eggshell and close it with great care, putting it into natural incubation. Then you will see the bird appear that had been reduced to ashes. Count Keenelm Digby affirms having reconstituted by the same process some crabs previously burned, and Paracelsus extends the virtue of palingenesis to all species of animals. His contemporary, Cornelius Agrippa of Nettesheim, seems to have known these experiments as well, because he says, there exists an artifice according to which, inside an egg placed under a brooding hen, a human figure is generated. So much is this, so that I saw it personally, and am willing to execute the experiment. The Magi attribute to a figure of this genre the most wonderful forces and give them the name of the true mandrake. Further on we shall have the opportunity to insist upon this interesting theme. Following the example of their master, the Paracelsians occupied themselves extensively with palingenesis, and wrote very many works on said subject. Among them we shall cite Gaston de Claves, Clavius, Quaesitanus, Pierre Borel, Nicholas Beguin, Otto Tachenius, Daniel Sennert, A. F. Piesold, Keenelm Digby, David van der Beek, and William Maxwell. The work of the rector of Heidelberg, Frank von Frankenau, is very far from exhausting the subject, and from the experimental point of view, it is based principally on the instructions, in their turn concordant, of Borel, Tachenius, and van der Beek. If I remember correctly, the last testimony of palingenetic practices proceeds from Eckhardshausen, who affirms two of our friends were able to observe real experiments presented in different ways. They witnessed the manipulations and even performed them themselves. One of them revived a ranunculus and the other a rose. They performed the same experiment with animals with which they obtained identical success. It is precisely by adhering to their principles and their system that I also wish to work. William Maxwell, the Gustav Jaeger of the 17th century, speaks of palingenesis in several chapters of his works. Unfortunately, he always speaks in the style of his master, Flood, that is, in a confused and mysterious manner. When treating the palingenesis of shadows, he expresses himself at the outset in the following terms. Take, he says, a sufficient quantity of rose leaves, dry them with fire, keeping it alive until they are reduced to a very white ash, a result which may be obtained by the simple combustion of dry rose leaves in a crucible with heat raised to red. Extract the salt from the ash by the system of common water and introduce said salt into a colatorium. Any flask with a polished lid may produce the same effect, taking care to seal the interstices in the best possible manner. Leave the colatorium on the fire for 3 months, which in this case is nothing other than the gentle heat of digestion, and bury it subsequently in a manure pile, as has already been stated in other experiments. Leave it there for the space of 3 months. Said preparations were buried for the effect of putrefaction in horse manure, which was renewed as the heat engendered by the rotting was extinguished. At the end of this time, withdraw the vessel and place it again upon the fire until the figures of the roses begin to appear inside the crucible. It is in this manner that Maxwell advises one to practice the palingenesis of all plants and even that of man, adding furthermore, just as the salts of plants find themselves obliged to let appear inside a crucible the figures of the plants that prepared said salts, so it is beyond doubt that the salt of blood, with the noblest blood particles of the body, is in a condition to reproduce a human figure under the influence of a slow heat. It behooves us to see at the bottom of all this the true homunculus of Paracelsus. In counterpart to this palingenesis of shadows, Maxwell also knows a palingenesis of bodies which proves that in this manner precedes the true mandrake of Agrippa, in a vessel that is not artificial, well closed, an eggshell. After the void has been provoked by aspiration, mix a little blood with the noblest particles of the body in convenient proportions and put it together in incubation. At the end of a determined time, you will find a mass that will remind you of the form of the human body, with which you will be able to execute wonderful things. Subsequently, you will see that a fatty liquid like olive oil will bathe the entire contour of said mass. This liquid, being mixed with your own sweat by means of a simple contact, you will realize serious modifications in the perceptions of your senses. David van der Beek gives the name idea seminalis, and, with regard to the palingenesis of plants, provides the following instructions. On a serene day, gather the mature seed of a plant, and, after it is well ground in a mortar, introduce it into a matrix of the same measure as the plant, taking care that said matrix has a narrow orifice to be able to be sealed hermetically. Keep the matrix closed until there is an evening that promises abundant dew during the night. Place the seed subsequently in a crystal vessel, placing this upon a plate, so that not even the slightest quantity is wasted. Let the preparation be left in a meadow or a garden where it may impregnate itself with dew. Before the sun appears, introduce everything into the matrix. Filter afterwards the collected dew and distill the whole until the dross disappears completely. If the dross does not disappear entirely, then let it be calcined, and after a series of washings a salt will be obtained, which you will dissolve in distilled dew. After this, pour a little of the distilled dew up to about 3 fingers over the seed impregnated with the same dew, after which one may hermetically seal the orifice of the matras, so that not the slightest evaporation is produced. Keep afterwards the matras in a place where a moderate heat may be maintained. At the end of a few days, the seed will begin to transform little by little into a kind of viscous earth. The alcohol on its surface will stand out sensibly, and along the entire contour a membrane will form similar to muddy and green earth. Expose then the closed matrix to the rays of the sun and the moon, and on rainy days keep it in a dry and warm precinct until all indications demonstrate that the experiment will be successful. If, after all these manipulations, you submit the matrix to a slow fire, you will see appear the image of the plant corresponding to the seed that was the object of the experiment, and you will see it disappear whenever the matrix returns to cool itself. All who practice palingenesis employ, with scant variance, this system of representation of the idea seminalis. Van der Beek cites also palingenesis by the system of ash, without giving, however, instructions or details regarding the same. And he is of the opinion that one can by said experiment practice with the persons who were pleasing to us, or with our ancestors a kind of licit necromancy, naturally provided that ashes of their corpses have been kept. This observation or citation of Van der Beek we find sufficiently completed in its essence in a work appearing at the end of the last century, where the following passage is read, "Take the seed of a plant. The plant may be of any vegetable family provided it is found in its maturity and has been harvested under a serene sky and in hours of excellent temperature. Process 4 pounds of grain in a crystal mortar. Place them in a convenient vessel that is of the size of the plant. Close the vessel subsequently so that nothing is lost. Store it in a warm place, and wait for a day in which the evening sky presents itself diagonally. When night approaches, place it in the open air in a field or garden so that it impregnates itself with dew, taking care to put a plate underneath the vessel so that there is better utilization. The dew will fall upon the seed and communicate to it its nature and its virtue. Besides this precaution, it is advised to spread clean cloths over the grass, cloths which, after being well soaked with dew, by means of their wringing, will provide us a greater collection of that substance, until a container only one can be filled. As for the seed thus impregnated, it must be introduced into the vessel before the rising of the sun, so that the star of the day with its burning rays does not reduce the dew to vapor. After this, filter and distill the contents repeatedly while one seeks to calcine the remains or dross of said dew in order to extract the salt from them. This salt will be dissolved together with the distilled dew and will be added to the seed reduced to dust in the vessel until covering it completely, and soon will be hermetically closed with a sealed lid. Subsequently, the vessel will be buried at a depth of some 66 centimeters in a mound of damp horse manure, leaving it there for about a month. Upon taking it from this place, one will be able to observe that the seed has transformed. On top of it, a membrane of various colors has formed, and attached to this a viscous earth. It will be seen also that the dew has assumed a greenish coloration of the same nature as the plant. During the entire summer, the vessel thus closed will be exposed to the rays of the sun, and at night to those of the moon and stars. In case of rain or variable weather, it must be withdrawn to a dry and temperate place until the weather improves, when it will then be exposed again to the sun and to the rays of the moon and stars. The success of the experiment may sometimes require 2 months and even a year, according to whether the temperature was propitious or not. For this, the atmosphere must be magnificent and hot. Here are the indications of growth. The viscous matter noticeably swells. The alcohol in the membrane begin to diminish day by day, and the whole contracts into a compact mass. Through the glass, and by the effect of the sun's reflections, one also observes a subtle vapor whose form or figure, which is the same as that of the plant, continues at this moment to be vague, isolated, and colorless, like a spiderweb. Let us recall here the spiderweb-like aspect offered in the supposition of many by specters, the White Lady, as she is called, and so many similar apparitions. This figure frequently rises and descends within the vessel at the impulse of the energy with which the sun acts upon it, and by the effect of the moon's rays when it shines in the sky with all its splendor. Finally, the dross and the alcohol transform into a kind of whitish ash, which in time gives birth to the stem, the plant, and the flowers with their exact color and identical shape. If we allow the vessel to cool, all this disappears and turns into a mass of muddy earth, only for the marvelous vision to reappear again when the vessel is placed once more upon the fire, or if one manages to heat it gently by any other process. Exposed again to the cold, the figures disappear, and so on successively. If the vessel is well sealed, the appearance of said figures may be effected indefinitely. Without doubt, these were the processes put into practice by the learned Jesuit Athanasius Kircher in the presence of Queen Christina of Sweden in 1687. The instructions of Oettinger we also find complete in the work of the chemist J.W. Becher, most renowned in his time. Let us see below in what terms the German translation expresses itself. Procure at a convenient time any plant, or rather each part of the plant in its own time, the root in November after the threshing of the seed, the flower in its full splendor, the plant before its flowering. Gather a significant fraction of all this and dry it in a shady place where neither the rays of the sun nor other heat penetrate. Let it then be calcined inside a clay pot, hermetically sealed, and let the salt and the hot water be extracted. Place the juice of the root, the plant, and the flower in a vessel of baked clay and dissolve the salt in this juice. This done, procure virgin earth, that is, earth that has not yet been tilled nor sown, as is found in deserted mountains. This earth must be red, pure, and unmixed. Reduce it to powder and pass it through a very fine sieve. A crystal vessel is then set in place. One sprinkles well with said juice until the earth has absorbed it completely and begins to assume a greenish hue. On top of this vessel place another of a size corresponding to the height and width of the plant. One must completely seal the interstices so that not the slightest current of air reaches the plant. Despite this, the vessel must contain in its posterior part a small orifice so that a little air may filter through to the earth. It may then be exposed to the rays of the sun or the gentle heat of a slow fire. Well then, at the end of half an hour, you will see the image of the plant emerge in a pearl-gray tone. In the same passage, Becker transmits to us furthermore the following instructions. In a mortar grind a plant with its roots and flowers, place it in a vessel or any other container and keep it there until its fermentation produces a certain benign heat. Then squeeze out the juice, purify it by means of a filter, and pour it over the residue for the purpose of accelerating putrefaction until the juice assumes the color of the plant. Squeeze out the juice again and filter it. Place it then in an alembic and let it digest until all impurities have detached themselves and the liquid appears clear, pure, and of the color of the plant. Then pour this liquid into another alembic and distill over the lower vessel, and by means of gentle heat, the aqueous part or phlegm and the volatile spirit. The sulfur, that is, the solid mass, will remain, which shall be set aside. Extract next the volatile ammoniacal products by distillation of the phlegm over a slow fire. These products, less dense than water, come from fermentation. They also be set aside. Let the residue then be calcined over a slow fire and extract from it the volatile salt as was done with the aqueous part. Said salt is formed by the ammoniacal salts united with the acidic products of combustion. Distill the aqueous part in a bain-marie to remove the volatile salt from it and calcine the residue until it becomes white as ash. Pour the phlegm over this residue and extract the fixed salt from it by means of washing. Filter the dross repeatedly and by the mentioned evaporation separate the purified salt. The volatile spirits with the sulfur and the spirits of fire which present themselves during distillation are then poured over the fixed salt and the volatile salt, all this to mix. Of the phlegm one may also use distilled rainwater and dissolve a salt of any plant. Instead of the fixed salt, carbonate of potash adds sulfur. Coagulate, desiccate by means of a slow fire, and regulate in this manner the union and combination of the three principles. Introduce these three principles into a large-sized vessel and join them with distilled water of the same plant or else alcohol of May dew or of rainwater. Any of these liquids serves for the case. Heat the hermetically sealed vessel over a slow fire, and you will see that within it an immaterial plant will grow with its flowers, and its vision will last as long as the heat endures. In turn, it will disappear every time the vessel cools, and you will have to heat it again, for it to reappear and so on indefinitely. This constitutes a great miracle of nature and of art. Our study will be completed with the following fragments extracted from the work Tearing the Veil of Magic by Eckhart. 2 great instructions regarding the palingenesis of bodies, and also that of shadows, are found in the Rosicrucian manuscripts of my great-grandfather. The first is attributed to Albertus Magnus, and figures in the Golden ABC of the Phenomena of Nature by Albertus Magnus, a manuscript booklet whose translation was evidently made upon an ancient Latin original. I could not tell you if this booklet is found in the great jammy edition of the works of Albertus Magnus, because said collection is not at my disposal. Despite this, the authenticity of origin of the cited booklet seems plausible to me for 2 reasons. First, from the printed works of Albertus Magnus it is deduced, in the first place and with evidence, that this great sage had knowledge of palingenesis. In the second place, it is very possible, for it is a thing that happens frequently, that manuscripts which exist in reality are not listed in the collection simply because the editor or the collector is unaware of their existence. We shall note here the first of said instructions, in the same way that in certain minerals the spiritus universi is found, and how from them one may also draw the spiritum universalum. In an identical manner, two minerals can, upon meeting, manufacture this spiritum themselves. One of them is a mineral called bismuthite that derives from the mountains. The other is a dark mineral earth found in silver mines. It contains a kind of marvelous spirit that provides life. The pebbles that lie in the bed of certain water currents also yield their liquorum, but their virtue is only valued for enriching metals, since it is proven that when submerged in said liquor, these metals increase in proportion. Here is how one obtains the spiritum derived from bismuth. Procure a minera bismuthi, just as it has been gathered from the mountain. Reduce it to impalpable powder by means of a mortar, and place this powder in a retort inside a large casserole filled with iron filings, taking care that these cover it completely. Fit a cooling coil to it immediately. At the end of 48 hours, the spiritum per gratis ignis is extracted, which will overflow, falling drop by drop like the tears that issue from the eyes. In this particular instance, the convenience of water is not foreseen here, in the manner one acts with the dew that produces the spiritum universi, and which in my writings I call spiritus rorus majalis. One may add something like half a pound of this liquid, which will be more convenient. Immediately add the spiritum bismuthi, and let the fire go out. When everything has cooled, pour the liquorum you have obtained from the distillation into a large alembic, and place this alembic in a balneum maris. After having covered it with an alembic once well sealed, distill its contents immediately. In this way you will obtain a spiritum pure as crystal, sweet as honey. This spiritum is a living spirit and belongs entirely to magic. This spirit made me a true mage. It is the only active spirit endowed with magical properties that received from God the forces he possesses. Since it can achieve all manner of forms, it is animal because it gives life to animals. It is vegetal because it gives life to the vegetabilia. Through it grow the trees, the foliage, the herbs, the flowers, that is, all the vegetabilia. It is mineral because it is the principle of all minerals and of all metals. It is astral because it comes from above to below and proceeds from the stars with which it is consequently impregnated. It is universal inasmuch as it was created according to a principle. It is the Word because it issued from God himself and is consequently intelligent, perceptible, and the primum mobile of all things. It is pure nature issued from the light and the fire, transported afterwards and integrated into inferior things. Referencing these things in his famous emerald tablet, Hermes says that the spirit was carried to them riding in the bosom of the winds. This spirit takes and gives, giving life, and with its help unsuspecting wonders can be performed. Let us see how it acts. Take a plant, a flower or a fruit, before they have naturally seasoned completely. Bunches of grapes, pears, apples, cherries, plums, etc. After choosing the best ones, hang them in the shade, and in the same way as the flowers let them dry if you wish. Later you will be able to force them to bloom again, to turn green again in the middle of winter, and they will even go so far as to yield new fruits, which will ripen and be tasty and succulent. Let us see then how the miracle will be realized. You must provide a container with a narrow neck and a wide belly in which you will pour 1 pound of universal spirit. Introduce next the branches, the flowers, and the fruits, and seal the container hermetically so that the spirit does not evaporate. 24 hours having elapsed, everything will begin to turn green again and to grow in size. The fruits will season, the flowers will clothe themselves in their colors and fragrance, and everything will return automatically to its primitive state of splendor. One must recognize in all this the power of God and not the work of the devil, as the ignorant Bishop of Possum affirms. This spirit of divine power is capable of performing furthermore other even more extraordinary things, as the Holy Father himself can justify. One must praise and pray to God for all the benefits and miracles with which he contemplates us, we poor human beings. It is a truth that no one can deny. There is much of the supernatural in the fact of reviving dead things by means of a spirit, which demonstrates on the other hand that this spirit has the power to bring into existence everything that was extinguished. So true is this that I myself, after catching a live bird and burning it in a vessel, placed the ashes in a container. Inside this, a liquid with the face of a child. In another container I placed the ashes of the decomposing corpse of a child, having previously burnt the earth of the container to red. And in another container I deposited the ashes of a burnt plant with its flowers. I filled the containers with spiritus and let the operation terminate by itself. The spirit, the astral body of the child and of the plant, developed in 24 hours, presented itself before me in the spiritus, with all the appearances of reality. Do we not have here a true resurrection of beings? The spirit, in this case the spiritus, presents itself in such a form that we can have a perfect idea of the aspect we ourselves will have when we are spirits, with pure bodies. That is, transparent and of a figure distinct from that which we present today. In the mode that the body with the soul and the spirit will achieve a new life, so too, after the transfiguration, shall we be in conditions to contemplate God, since He is luminous force. I mean to say that I possess a spirit with which I could distract myself a few hours a day. But this spirit is nothing other than the immaterial representation of the manner in which we shall resurrect from among the dead. By reason of a judicial inquiry, they found in my house a container in which there was the liquor, with a drop of the blood of Thomas Aquinas, disciple of Albertus Magnus, who in his turn also carries with him a drop of my blood. When we wish to know how a friend we esteem is faring in health by said process, we can have news of him day and night. If this friend has fallen ill, the small light inside the container oscillates with only weak scintillations instead of being brilliant. If he is gravely infirm, the light almost extinguishes. If he is seized by ire or choler, the container heats up. The light becomes agitated. When the friend dies, the light goes out and the crucible bursts. Furthermore, with this system one arrives at the possibility of directing speech to the distant friend, since said spirit is all-powerful, and everything proceeds from that unique spirit. The Paracelsians and the Rosicrucians concerned themselves enormously with these vital lamps, and an individual named Berggraf also published a special book on this theme to which Van Helmont refers, but which it was not possible to locate anywhere. To conclude, I wish to give knowledge further of an experiment of palingenesis that figures in the Testament of the Brethren of the Golden Rosy Cross. It conveys very well and makes a pair with a previous instruction, and for a chemist who disposes of a regular laboratory, it will become a very easy experiment. Method of preparing the universal spirit with the help of dew, rain, and frost. My children, may zeal for the work animate you. From the day of the new year, in a large cask collect frost, snow, and rainwater in abundance. Let these things enter into decomposition by themselves, and let them rot until the month of July, when the mass of muddy earth ceases to be homogeneous, and on its surface a layer or green crust forms. Then it will be a sign that the force of vegetation has revealed itself. My children, then the moment will have arrived to set yourselves to work. Mix everything. Seek to pour it into a coil, an alembic with its coil, and distill with slow fire the 100 pounds and 10 pounds at a time, and no more until your water is completely exhausted. Pour again into a coil and distill again into 10 pounds. This residue of the first distillation. After the residue is cast out, distill again in portions of 10 pounds, afterwards with slow fire and with the heat of the ash itself. By distillation these 10 pounds into 6 pounds. Introduce the spiritum again into a retort. Immerse this in a water bath and reduce it further to 3 pounds. At this moment, that is in the 7th distillation, a very volatile spirit will rise, which is like a pure air, better yet a spirit capable of giving life. Since if you absorb the quantity that fits in a small spoon, you will experience in all your members the effects of its magical power. It reanimates the heart and renews the whole body like a beneficial spirit. You will have to rectify the spirit 7 times to arrive at achieving definitive success. You may then utilize it for different uses and to achieve true miracles, because the spirit awakens all things and calls them to life. Take now the ashes of a plant, of a flower or of a root, or the ashes of an animal, bird or lizard, or else the ashes of the decomposing corpse of a child. Burn them to redness, put them in a large crystal vessel, pour this wonderful vivifying spirit over it, so that it covers all the matter well, and hermetically seal the vessel, which you will place in a warm spot. When 3 times 24 hours are completed, the plant will appear with its flowers, the animal or the child with all its limbs. Results that many use for ample experiments. Nevertheless, these beings are purely creatures, inasmuch as upon shaking or cooling the vessel they disappear immediately. If the container is left at rest, they appear again, which results in a marvelous spectacle worthy of being appreciated. A spectacle that allows us to watch the resurrection of the dead and shows us how all things of nature will regain their figure after the universal resurrection. Sun now, it is a dry, withered flower, a small branch, a bundle of grass, or a bunch of grapes that I cut with its leaves and its stalk to let them rot in the shade. It is also a handful of fruits that are not totally ripe, Well then, every time I wanted my disciples to witness the wonder, the only thing I did was place these pieces of nature in a container and pour over them the quantity of spirit that was necessary. It is necessary that the container be bulging and have a narrow neck. I sealed this container hermetically with sealing wax and left it at rest for 24 hours. At the end of this period, everything began to turn green again and to bloom to the point that the fruits returned to assume life in the middle of winter and ripened perfectly after 3 or 4 days and their respective nights. They ripened and acquired a peculiar taste. I could say that I had received them from such and such a country, especially to those who are absolutely unaware of such experiments. My son, I placed finally a little of my own blood or the blood of a dear friend. I solidly sealed the flask, and through it I have been able to have constant knowledge of how my friend's health was faring, whether he lived happily or unhappily, because inside the flask his personality presents itself at all moments, with all its characteristics, and in an exact manner that leaves no margin for doubt. If the friend lives happily, the purest clarity reigns in the flask, and around it everything shows itself with life. If some danger lurks for the person of the friend, inside the flask everything appears clouded and sad. If he has fallen ill, the densest darkness and strangest agitation rule within it. If the friend dies a natural death, a gray shadow stirs in the flask. If he dies violently, the flask bursts. Therefore, it is in this manner that, with the help of this life-giving spirit, innumerable wonders may be obtained. As we have seen, the most illustrious men of antiquity occupied themselves with palingenesis, from the Greek palin and genesis. Plato, Seneca, Avicenna, Averroes, Albertus Magnus, Agrippa, Cardano, Raymond Lully, Kircher, and others. In more recent times, wise men of all nations have equally occupied themselves with such transcendental matter. Eckhart, Schausen, Maxwell, Frank von Frankenow, Otto Tachenius, Kenelm Digby, David van der Beek, Schopenhauer, Louis Figuier, and very many more. H.P. Blavatsky, a master in occultism, in her Theosophical Glossary, records the name of Gaffarel with the following data. Gaffarel, alchemist and philosopher who lived in the mid-17th century, is the first known philosopher to maintain that every natural object, plant, living creature, etc., after being burned, retained its form in its ashes, and that said form could be made to arise from them again. This phenomenon was proven by the eminent chemist Duchenne. After him, Father Kircher, Digby, and Viamont certified the fact, demonstrating that the astral forms of burned plants could be reborn from their ashes. Despite the exposition presented, some of our readers, little familiarized with occultist theories, will find difficulty in accepting the reality of palingenesis, and will view it as one of the many erroneous beliefs of past centuries to which no one gives importance nowadays. However, it is not quite so. Contemporary scholars of universally recognized scientific standing treat the marvelous phenomena of the palingenesis of plants and animals, some in terms of affirmation and others of possibility. The eminent theosophist Franz Hartmann expresses himself regarding such an interesting subject thus: if a thing loses its material substance, the invisible form remains nevertheless in the light of nature, the astral light, and if we can clothe said form with visible matter, we can make it visible again. All matter is composed of 3 elements, known in alchemy by the names of sulfur, mercury, and salt. By alchemical means we can create a magnetic attraction in the astral form, so that it may attract from the elements the akasha, the principles it possessed before its modification, and incorporate them, then making them visible anew. The astral body of an individual form remains with the remains of the latter until said remains have decomposed completely, and by certain methods known to alchemists, it may be clothed in matter and become visible again. Dr. Gustav Gailey, director of the International Metapsychic Institute, who with his dazzling works Ectoplasm and Clairvoyance awakened extraordinary interest in the scientific world regarding the most disquieting questions of transcendental occultism, also wrote something on palingenesis. The following words are his, which constitute a peremptory affirmation. Palingenesis suppresses all difficulties opposed to idealism by materialism, all objections raised in the name of logic against the notion of survival. Chapter 3. Elements of Astrology. We will conclude our modest essay on magic plants with a few brief words regarding astrological correspondences, with the aim of guiding those readers of ours who may perchance be unaware of the most elementary aspects of astrology. Zodiac signs and their influences on the human body. The signs of the zodiac form an imaginary band or zone in which the 12 constellations are found. The sun apparently traverses these constellations during 1 year around the earth. For this reason they are called the signs of the zodiac. Here are the symbols, names of the signs, and their influences on the human body. Aries, the head; Taurus, the neck; Gemini, the arms and the back; Cancer, the stomach; Leo, the heart; Virgo, the belly; Libra, the kidneys and the buttocks; Scorpio, the sexual organs; Sagittarius, the muscles; Capricorn, the knees; Aquarius, the legs; Pisces, the feet. The signs dominate the firmament as follows: Aries from March 27, Taurus from April 22 to May 21st, Gemini from May 22 to June 21st, Cancer from June 22 to July 21st, Leo from July 22 to August 21st, Virgo from August 22 to September 21st, Libra from September 22 to October 21st, Scorpio from October 22 to November 21st, Sagittarius from November 22 to December 21st, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces follow accordingly. The 7 planets. According to ancient astrology, the planets that exert influence upon the earth correspond, in the 3 kingdoms of nature, to the 7 days of the week. Below is the planetary table with their astrological signs, names, days of the week, and emblematic colors: Moon, Monday; white; Mars, Tuesday, red; Mercury, Wednesday, violet; Jupiter, Thursday, blue; Venus, Friday, green; Saturn, Saturday, black; Sun, Sunday, yellow. Planetary hours to achieve happy success in any undertaking, whether magical or alchemical. One must take into account the astrological schedule. If the endeavor is undertaken haphazardly, failure is absolute. The astrological hours are divided into diurnal and nocturnal and change every day. Here is the complete synopsis. Sunday. Diurnal hours: 1st, Sun; 2nd, Venus; 3rd, Mercury; 4th, Moon; 5th, Saturn; 6th, Jupiter; 7th, Mars; 8th, Sun; 9th, Venus; 10th, Mercury; 11th, Moon; 12th, Saturn. Nocturnal hours: 1st, Jupiter; 2nd, Mars; 3rd, Sun; 4th, Venus; 5th, Mercury; 6th, Moon; 7th, Saturn; 8th, Jupiter; 9th, Mars; 10th, Sun; 11th, Venus; 12th, Mercury. Monday. Diurnal hours: 1st, Moon; 2nd, Saturn; 3rd, Jupiter; 4th, Mars; 5th, Sun; 6th, Venus; 7th, Mercury; 8th, Moon; 9th, Saturn; 10th, Jupiter; 11th, Mars; 12th, Sun. Nocturnal hours: 1st, Venus; 2nd, Mercury; 3rd, Moon; 4th, Saturn; 5th, Jupiter; 6th, Mars; 7th, Sun; 8th, Venus; 9th, Mercury; 10th, Moon; 11th, Saturn; 12th, Jupiter. Tuesday. Diurnal hours: 1st, Mars; 2nd, Sun; 3rd, Venus; 4th, Mercury; 5th, Moon; 6th, Saturn; 7th, Jupiter; 8th, Mars; 9th, Sun; 10th, Venus; 11th, Mercury; 12th, Moon. Nocturnal hours: 1st, Saturn; 2nd, Jupiter; 3rd, Mars; 4th, Sun; 5th, Venus; 6th, Mercury; 7th, Moon; 8th, Saturn; 9th, Jupiter; 10th, Mars; 11th, Sun; 12th, Venus. Wednesday. Diurnal hours: 1st, Mercury; 2nd, Moon; 3rd, Saturn; 4th, Jupiter; 5th, Mars; 6th, Sun; 7th, Venus; 8th, Mercury; 9th, Moon; 10th, Saturn; 11th, Jupiter; 12th, Mars. Nocturnal hours: 1st, Sun; 2nd, Venus; 3rd, Mercury; 4th, Moon; 5th, Saturn; 6th, Jupiter; 7th, Mars; 8th, Sun; 9th, Venus; 10th, Mercury; 11th, Moon; 12th, Saturn. Thursday. Diurnal hours: 1st, Jupiter; 2nd, Mars; 3rd, Sun; 4th, Venus; 5th, Mercury; 6th, Jupiter; 7th, Saturn; 8th, Jupiter; 9th, Mars; 10th, Sun; 11th, Venus; 12th, Mercury. Nocturnal hours: 1st, Moon; 2nd, Saturn; 3rd, Jupiter; 4th, Mars; 5th, Sun; 6th, Venus; 7th, Mercury; 8th, Moon; 9th, Saturn; 10th, Jupiter; 11th, Mars; 12th, Sun. Friday. Diurnal hours: 1st, Venus; 2nd, Mercury; 3rd, Moon; 4th, Saturn; 5th, Jupiter; 6th, Mars; 7th, Sun; 8th, Venus; 9th, Mercury; 10th, Moon; 11th, Saturn; 12th, Jupiter. Nocturnal hours: 1st, Mars; 2nd, Sun; 3rd, Venus; 4th, Mercury; 5th, Moon; 6th, Saturn; 7th, Jupiter; 8th, Mars; 9th, Sun; 10th, Venus; 11th, Mercury 12th, Moon. Saturday. Diurnal hours 1st, Saturn 2nd, Jupiter 3rd, Mars 4th, Sun 5th, Venus 6th, Mercury 7th, Moon 8th, Saturn 9th, Jupiter 10th, Mars 11th, Sun 12th, Venus. Nocturnal hours 1st, Mercury 2nd, Moon 3rd, Saturn 4th, Jupiter 5th, Mars 6th, Sun 7th, Venus 8th, Mercury 9th, Moon 10th, Saturn 11th, Jupiter 12th, Mars. With these brief astrological notes, the student of occultism will be able to utilize the teachings found in the Little Dictionary of Occult Botany that we insert in this work. Little Dictionary of Occult Botany. In this very brief dictionary of occult botany, we have included the names of certain plants with their common denomination accompanied, however, by the scientific one. The aim is to avoid errors, for it is known that the same plant is usually known under different names. With the Latin denomination one may, whether in Spain or at any point on the globe, know exactly the plant we describe. It is sufficient to consult a current botany text. We also note, although very briefly, the medicinal uses that official science teaches us, and subsequently we occupy ourselves with their magical virtues according to occult science. Lastly, we record sometimes, and as a curiosity, the superstitious beliefs and practices regarding plants that the broad field of folklore so lavishly offers us. We have preceded the publication of this dictionary with some brief astrological notes, so that the layman in the subject may know, at a fixed moment, the convenient hour in which a plant must be harvested, when it is a matter of utilizing it in some magical operation. Although this condition is absolutely indispensable in the case cited, one may dispense with it when it is a matter of utilizing the plants in therapeutics. However, it behooves us to state that the physicians of antiquity prescribed their recipes taking into consideration planetary influences. At the beginning of the last century, there were still physicians who neither purged nor bled their patients without first consulting the influence of the moon and whether the zodiacal sign was favorable. A list of authors consulted for the making of the present dictionary includes Agrippa, Albertus Magnus, Dioscorides, and the divine Paracelsus. Agave. The fresh leaves of this cactus, when chewed, produce terrifying hallucinations. With the dry leaves also chewed, one obtains joyful visions of an erotic character. This plant is much sought after by the Indians of Texas and New Mexico. The cactus, in all its varieties, brings luck according to popular belief. It must be harvested in the hour of Saturn. Agaric. So famous in antiquity, this plant is nowadays relegated almost to oblivion. Medical science dispenses with it, and yet it possesses some quite appreciable therapeutic qualities. It yields excellent results in diverse nervous diseases, such as convulsions and epilepsy. In said diseases, agaric is employed in the form of a decoction obtained by boiling for 15 minutes 5 grams of crushed material in half a liter of water. Dose, 1 small cup every 4 hours. According to Pliny, the infusion of agaric, taken at the end of the menstrual period, facilitates conception and combats sterility in many cases. Cult botany. At Christmas, at the propitious astrological hour, the Druids pompously celebrated the harvest of the agaric berries. These berries, saturated with the triple fluidism of the tree of the stars and of the faith of the participants in the ceremony, converted themselves into powerful magnetic condensers which were used to perform marvelous cures in truly desperate cases. Here is what H. P. Blavatsky says in her Theosophical Glossary: "This curious vegetable, which grows only as a parasite on various trees, was a mystical plant in diverse ancient religions, and above all in that of the Celts. Its priests cut the agaric in certain seasons with many ceremonies, availing themselves only of a golden sickle, especially consecrated." Hyslop insinuates the idea that the agaric, being a branch that sprouts from a mother tree, was adored as a divine branch emerged from a terrestrial tree, the union of divinity with humanity. In German, the name of this plant means cure-all. Compare the golden bough mentioned in Virgil's Aeneid and in Pliny's Universal History. The priest, clad in a white vestment, climbs the tree and harvests the agaric with a golden sickle. Among the Druids, this parasitic plant symbolizes divine sacrifice, the descent of spirit into matter. It is cold and dry, a sign of the zodiac. Taurus, southernwood, plants similar to absinthe. It is enthelmintic, stomachic, and stimulating. It is recommended to provoke menstrual flow and is excellent for facilitating childbirth. Cult botany, hot and dry. Moon. It is harvested in early April under the sign of Scorpio. Absinthe. It is vermifuge and febrifuge. It produces insomnia and terrifying hallucinations in very nervous people. Cult botany. Receptacle of the lower astral, its flowers, dried and burned, are used as a powerful perfume in infernal evocations. Mars. Zodiacal sign Capricorn. Acacia, sacred tree of the Egyptians. In Freemasonry, it symbolizes the immortality of the soul. In the Rose-Cross degree and in various Masonic rites, it is taught that the acacia reminds one that the cross on which the Divine Master died was of this wood. Cult botany. The juice of the fruit, gathered at the corresponding planetary hour, is mixed into the inks that serve to draw talismans upon parchments. Planet, Mercury, saffron. It possesses many curative properties, but its use cannot be recommended to those profane in the art of healing. It is utilized in spells and magic perfumes. It is harvested when the sun is in Leo or in Pisces, or when the moon is in Cancer. Acanthus, perennial plant. Its leaves, full of mucilaginous juice, are apparative, emollient, and very effective for curing all manner of burns. We are unaware of its magic properties, if indeed it has them. Planet Mars, aconite. Laymen must not make use of this plant in medicinal matters, for it offers grave dangers. Cult botany. It is cold and dry. It is employed mixed with rue, saffron, and aloes in fumigations to drive away evil spirits. It is one of the 12 plants of the Rosicrucians. The Greeks said that this plant was born from the slaver of Cerberus when Hercules took him from the Infernos. The virtue of making hair grow back is attributed to it. Planet, Saturn. Chaste tree agrimony. Paracelsus called this plant satanic and employed its grains in infusion to cure the ardors of the flesh. Its aphrodisiac properties were already known to the Athenians, who placed this plant in their beds with the purpose of preserving continence. Planet, Saturn, zodiacal sign, Cancer, agrimony, cold and dry. It is vermifuge. Its leaves are astringent. It cures anginas, nephritis, leucoreal flows, and debility of the bladder. In lotion form, it is very good against cataracts, dislocations, and wounds. It is effective against snake bites. Cult botany. Placed upon the head of a sleeping person, the leaves of this plant deprive them of waking. Celery. The grains of this plant are digestive and very effective against flatulence. Its roots are diuretic and apparative. The infusion of this plant is a good remedy to reduce mother's milk. Small cup every 3 hours. Cult botany. A sacred plant among the Greeks. It was utilized in many funereal ceremonies. We are unaware of its magic virtues. Artichoke. Slightly aphrodisiac. The root or the grain, if harvested when the sun enters the 5th degree of the constellation of Libra, cures flows of blood and pains of the belly. The water of the inner down is excellent for preserving the hair. Mars in Scorpio. Garlic. The Egyptians paid great honors to these bulbs. The Greeks, however, prohibited entry into the temple to anyone who had eaten garlic. Regarding medicinal effects, the action of these bulbs has been appreciated in all epochs. They are anti-helminthic, stimulant, anti-rheumatic, and expectorant. They correct menstruation, are good against dropsy and stone disease. They are also employed with success against bronchitis. Applied directly, they are an excellent corn remover and serve equally to combat scabies and ringworm. The use of garlic is recommended in the combat against rabies. To the one attacked by hydrophobia, one gives the quantity of garlic that their organism can tolerate, submitting them immediately to a steam bath to provoke the greatest possible abundance of sweat. Paracelsus informs us of having cured by this process many sick people attacked by this terrible evil. Cult botany. To preserve oneself from every malefice, 7 garlics are harvested at the hour of Saturn, threaded onto a small hemp string, and carried hanging from the neck for 7 Saturdays. One shall remain free of spells for all of life. To drive birds away from a tree, it suffices to smear the branches with garlic. If a person desires odorless garlic, one need only plant and harvest them when the moon is not found above our horizon. Aloe. Genus of liliaceous plants. From their leaves a juice is extracted that converts into brittle masses the color of carob. When administered correctly, it produces excellent effects as an apparative. It is dosed between 5 and 10 centigrams. As a purgative, a dose is administered between 10 centigrams and 1.5 grams, according to the age of the one taking it. For children, it is always a bad purgative. Pregnant women also must not take it. Taken in a dose of 0.5 gram and repeated for a certain time, it provokes menstrual evacuation. Lotions of aloe juice with vinegar prevent hair loss. Cult botany. Powdered aloes mixed with incense are employed as a perfume to attract the influences of Jupiter. Fenugreek. Applied in poultices, the flour of its seeds is an effective remedy to resolve swellings and inflammations. Alder. This plant offers the circumstance that its leaves become white when the atmosphere disposes itself to rain. This being so, it constitutes a perfect natural barometer. Cult botany. The charcoal of this wood is employed to trace magic circles in diabolical evocations. Angelica. It has the name of herb of the Holy Spirit. Its root is tonic and stimulant. It is employed with success against the debility of digestive organs. In general, it possesses antispasmodic, carminative, and stomachic properties. Cult botany. Good for preventing hallucinations, contrary to fascination. Placed on the neck of children, it defends them against all sorts of bewitchments. Harvested at the hour of Saturn, the leaves are good to cure gout. The root. Pulled up at the hours of the Sun or of Mars under the sign of Leo, cures gangrene and venomous bites. It is harvested in late August. Leo and Aquarius. Green anise. The fruits of this plant activate the work of the stomach and the intestines. Furthermore, it is diuretic and tempering. It is used in infusion. Heat 10 grams of its fruits until boiling in a liter of water. Cover well, let cool, and strain to combat colics in nursing infants. The wet nurse must take a small cup every 3 hours. In lotions, it improves sight. In infusion with wine and saffron, it cures ophthalmias. In fragments softened in water and introduced into the nostrils, it cures ulcers of the nose. We are unaware of any magic properties for it. Its curative properties are more effective if said plant is harvested at the hour of Mercury under the constellations of Gemini or Virgo. Birthwort. It is pulmonary, diuretic, amenagogue, detersive, and vulnerary. It favors the expulsion of the afterbirth and cures uterine flows. Lotions with wine cure scabies and desiccate every species of sore. Cult botany. The smoke of its grains calms epileptics, the possessed, and unties the knot of the ligature. To relieve the head in transitory dizziness, it gives excellent results. In chronic pulmonary catarrhs without fever of the elderly and in urinary retentions due to paralysis of the bladder, it is a very popular external remedy against blows and falls. The tincture must be diluted in water and must not be employed pure. In some cases, when the contusion is strong and there are no scratches, it may be employed alone or else with very little water. Cult botany. It is one of the 12 plants of the ancient Rosicrucians. Mugwort, also called St. John's herb. The leaves, flowers, and roots are employed. It is stimulating and tonic. It is employed with success against epilepsy. Boiled with wine and taken in small doses, it prevents miscarriages. It is highly indicated to provoke menstruation. Cult botany. It was one of the 12 plants of the ancient Rosicrucians. Harvested on St. John's Day, if suspended from the trunk of an oak tree in the middle of a field, the latter becomes fertile. If it cannot be done on this day, it may be harvested on any Friday before sunrise. Harvested at night, this plant constitutes a powerful amulet against all types of sorcery. Burnt as incense in the sleeping chamber, it undoes the ligature of the aiguillette. In Germany, on the morning of St. John's Day, they fashion crowns of mugwort and bring them near the bonfires, keeping them afterward as preventives against bewitchments. In the Norman forest, they harvest it during the novena of St. John to destroy the hexes that deprive cows of giving milk. In Austria, neither the devil nor witches have any power over one who carries said plant with them. Likewise, a branch placed on the door of a house prevents the bewitchment of the same. In southern Germany and Bohemia they fashion, during the novena of St. John, a species of crown with this plant to later place them next to an image of the Holy Evangelist, which they illuminate with 1 or 3 lamps. In this manner they find themselves free and immune against spells for the entire year. Scattering its leaves over a field on the occasion of sowing preserves it against hail and stones. With the 3 flowers and leaves of this plant, perfumes are made against spirits guarding treasures and against demons. Common oat. Against rheumatism, hot poultices prepared with wine. Against dropsy, 25 grams of seeds reduced to powder, 250 grams of water. Boil for the space of 15 minutes. Let cool for a moment and strain through a woolen straining cloth. Take 4 cups daily for a long time. Furthermore, it is an excellent diuretic, for it may be administered to very debilitated patients without fear of exhausting them. Against putrid sores, hot poultice composed of 5 grams of brewer's yeast and 100 grams of oatmeal. To cure scabies, lie naked upon a field of oats, rubbing the skin with a handful of stalks of the same plant dipped in spring water. Let the skin dry afterward naturally beneath a tree, and the scabies will disappear. We are unaware of its magical properties. Planet, sun, and moon. Witch hazel. A plant the people call the witch's hazel. It has many therapeutic applications. One of the most notable properties of the witch hazel is that of being anti-hemorrhoidal. Let us see how the ointment to cure hemorrhoids is prepared. 100 grams of unsalted butter, 10 grams of tincture of hamamelis. Place everything together homogeneously in a mortar. Use 3 applications per day. The tincture of hamamelis is obtained in the following manner: 100 grams of 90-degree alcohol, 20 grams of small pieces of witch hazel bark and dry leaves. Keep soaking for 20 days, filter and bottle. Cult botany. The magic wand is made of wild hazel by cutting a branch at sunrise on any day in the month of June. There are treatises on divinatory magic that recommend it be cut at the full moon, but also within the month of June. The manner of making use of this wand is the following. 1 harvests a forked branch of hazel measuring 5 centimeters in length and of the thickness of a finger, and which is no more than 1 year old. 1 holds the branch by the ends, 1 in each hand, without squeezing, such that the back of the hand faces the ground and the vertex of the wand faces forward. Then 1 walks slowly through the places where one supposes there is water, metals, or hidden money. There's another mode of using the wand which consists of carrying it in equilibrium upon the back of the hand and walking slowly. When passing over a spring, it will begin to turn. Father Kircher expresses himself in a very clear manner. 1 harvests a shoot of hazel, very straight and without knots. 1 cuts it into 2 equal pieces. 1 drills the tip of one of them, forming a small hole. 1 cuts the extremity of the other in the form of a point such that the extremity of one penetrates that of the other. 1 advances in this position, holding it between the index fingers. When 1 passes over streams of water or metallic veins, the wand oscillates markedly. Planet, Mercury. Garden sorrel. It is depurative and refreshing. Cut into small pieces and placed in strong white vinegar for 48 hours, the root is an excellent remedy against skin eruptions. It is employed in lotions. The juice of this plant, freshly extracted, is employed with success when applied over putrid and gangrenous ulcers, it being necessary to cover them immediately with hydrophilic cotton, which is secured with a bandage. Holm oak. In therapeutics, only the bark of this tree is used. It is astringent. It is employed against serous diarrheas, hemorrhages, leukorrhea, hemoptysis. Administered in large doses, it is used against pulmonary tuberculosis. The best way to use this material is in a decoction. For 15 minutes, boil 25 grams of bark in small pieces in half a liter of water. Let cool and strain. Dose, 4 cups per day or more, if immediate improvement is not felt. Cult botany. From an ancient Latin grimoire, we copy the following. To be happy in business, take 5 acorns from a holm oak, harvested on a Sunday and in its planetary hour. Burn and reduce to powder. This powder shall be kept in a small yellow silk bag, and the person shall carry it with them. This amulet, called that of the sun, the grimoire adds, greatly favors the one involved in the process. Burdock. Cold and dry. It acts upon skin diseases, ulcers, gout, and syphilis. It gives excellent results in kidney and bladder stones, as well as in hepatic colic, applied in a decoction. The leaves constitute a notable remedy against ringworm. It is used in infusion. 25 grams in a liter of water. We are unaware of its magical properties. Belladonna, cold and humid. This plant is very active and, like aconite and henbane, its employment must be directed by a doctor. Cult botany. It has properties very similar to henbane, and is another of the various plants that enter into the composition of the witch's ointment. Its dry and triturated leaves, mixed with saffron and camphor, constitute a magic perfume to drive away astral larvae. Saturn, Venus, Scorpio, Bethany? Ingested, it produces abundant defecation. Externally, it is applied with success on varicose ulcers and infected sores. It is employed in a decoction, 100 grams in a liter of water. Cult botany. It is indicated against bewitchment. Bistort. Its root is employed as a powerful astringent to combat chronic diarrheas. It is used in gargles to cure chronic inflammations of the mouth and to strengthen the gums. Applied in lotions, it helps to cicatrize all types of sores. It is a great tonic to combat incipient tuberculosis, taken with wine from 50 to 100 grams. We are unaware of its magical virtues. White bryony. The people baptize this plant with the names of gallant turnip, diabolical turnip, devil's death, and various others. Its internal use offers various dangers. We recommend its employment to combat swelling of the throat, the chest, the belly, the legs, etc. In the following form: 25 grams of bryony root, 200 grams of pure olive oil. Boil until its content takes on a black color. Apply by rubbing over the diseased part and place a bandage immediately following. Cult botany. It is employed in certain ceremonies of black magic. Columella attributes to it the virtue of warding off lightning bolts. For this, it is necessary to place a small sprig of bryony at each of the 4 cardinal points of the building one wishes to preserve from the electric spark. Planet, Mercury. Bugloss. The juice of this plant's leaves is excellent for curing heart palpitations. For this, 30 grams of juice are mixed with an equal amount of sugar until forming a kind of syrup. Take upon retiring to bed for a few days. The flowers are highly recommended for mild bronchitis and light catarrh. The best way to administer these flowers for said diseases is as follows. In half a liter of water, boil 10 grams of the flowers and leaves of this plant. Let cool and strain. Use 4 to 6 cups, divided conveniently throughout the day. Cult botany. We are aware of its magical properties. Mullein. Leaves and flowers of this plant are employed. It serves to combat asthma, bloody tenesmus, and coughs. It is administered as an infusion in half a liter of water. Boil leaves and flowers, mixed in the quantity of 10 grams. Take 1 small cup every hour in chronic affections, and after the fits have passed, 4 small cups per day. In some cases of syphilis, the leaves have shown good results, and in a milk infusion they also serve against pulmonary tuberculosis. Externally, they are applied fresh to cure wounds. Camellia, a plant originating from China, imported to Europe by a learned Jesuit named Camelli, from whom it took the name it bears. It possesses no therapeutic applications. Cult botany. Conveniently distilled, this plant produces an oil of great magical value intended for fueling lamps employed in theurgic rites, such as angelic evocations. Its use is very beneficial in spiritual settings, for with it communications would be achieved only with very high spirits, or at least with benevolent spirits. Cane. Used as a mild depurative and also to dry up the milk of wet nurses. In half a liter of water, boil 30 grams of its root, reduced to powder for 25 minutes. Let cool and strain. As a depurative, take 4 cups daily. As a lactifuge, take 1 small cup every 3 hours. Cult botany. The secret we are about to point out. We do not know if it is truly worthy of credit or if it belongs to popular superstition. We publish it as a curiosity, for it deals with a very ancient belief that has survived to present times. It is affirmed that to cure a dislocation of limbs, however strong it may be, it suffices to place upon it 2 pieces of cane, cut with this intention and placed one inside the other. There is a version according to which the pieces of cane must be from 2 distinct canes. For our part, we shall add that such a practice could very well succeed if the one executing it has unbreakable faith in it and knows how to apply their entire force of will. Planet, Mercury, cinnamon. Cinnamon is the second bark of a tree called the cinnamon tree that grows in Ceylon and in other hot countries. It is employed much more in the culinary art than in therapeutics. It is excellent for provoking menstruation, motions, syncopes, spasms, and other analogous accidents. In these cases, a few small spoons of this bark are taken in tincture, which is prepared as follows. 100 grams of cinnamon reduced to small pieces, which are left to macerate for 15 days in half a liter of 80-degree alcohol. Cult botany. It is employed in the magical perfumes of the sun and in certain love philters, the use of which the white magician must repel. Indian hemp, a plant originating from the Orient. It is extremely active. It must not be used without the assistance of a physician, for without him there is a risk of poisoning. In tincture, it is recommended against attacks of whooping cough, in neuralgias, and in headaches. It is advised as a sedative in fits provoked by stomach ulcers. It may be used as a hypnotic, given that it induces sleep. The tincture is prepared in the following manner: 20 grams of hemp tips, 100 grams of 90-degree alcohol, leave to macerate for 15 days and filter with paper. The medical dose is 5 to 25 drops per day. Cult botany. Indian hemp produces a fatty extract from which the famous hashish is manufactured. In 1 or 2 ingestions, this product provides mystical, diabolical, or extreme erotic ecstasies according to the morality or mentality of the individual using it. These ecstasies are almost unknown to the West. In compensation, certain sects utilize it and apply it wisely in their ceremonies and liturgical rites. Planet, Saturn. Onion. White onion or common onion. This garden plant is diuretic, stimulant, vermifuge, expectorant, and aphrodisiac. It is administered against urine retention, intestinal worms, pulmonary catarrh, bronchial cough, and scurvy. The juice, freshly extracted by pressure, is used mixed with syrup in a dose of 4 to 8 grams. For external use it is applied cooked or raw. In the first case it acts as an emollient, and in the second as a rubefacient. It is used against pneumonias proceeding in the following manner. Place the onion cut in a cross in a covered pot, and heat gently until a small quantity of water is released. Then sprinkle with essence of turpentine and apply over the ailing part. The juice of each raw onion applied in frictions upon the scalp halts hair loss. Against earache, bake an onion in the embers, place it upon a piece of cloth with a little fresh, unsalted butter, and apply the whole to the ear in the hottest state possible for a few minutes. Squill, well known to the people. We record it solely with the aim of warning our readers so that they do not make use of it in home medicine, seeing that it offers serious dangers. We are unaware of its occult properties. Celandine. Used internally, it is very dangerous. That is why we only make known its external use. The juice of this plant, which can be extracted by pounding its root in a mortar, extirpates warts. Against the suppression of the menses, a cataplasm of said plant is applied upon the pelvis. For this, a whole plant of good size must be pounded until achieving a mash composed of fresh stalks, leaves, and roots. According to a popular remedy, this juice serves to clear the sight. Beware of this use, for whoever seeks to utilize it runs the risk of going blind. Cult botany. The root of the celandine placed upon the head of a sick person in a feverish state will make him sing if he is truly to die, and contrariwise, if he is to continue living, he will begin to weep bitterly. Sign: Sagittarius, Lesser Centauri. Its stalks and flowers are a bitter tonic of the first order in digestive debility and lack of appetite. It is administered against intermittent fevers, flatulence, and gout. The infusion is prepared with 5 grams of flowers in half a liter of water. Heat until boiling and strain. It is applied externally upon scrofulous ulcers and upon wounds. Cult botany. According to legend, it was discovered by the centaur Chiron. It is anti-demonic. It possesses great magical virtues. It must be harvested while pronouncing words of enchantment. Plenty. In an ancient grimoire attributed to Albertus Magnus one reads the following: If the tips of this plant are thrown into the oil of a lamp with a little blood of a female, terrifying hallucinations will be provoked in those who are illuminated by said lamp. If a bundle of this plant is thrown into the fire, and if the person stands contemplating it for a moment and then directs their gaze toward the sky, they will have the impression that the stars are moving and falling. If someone inhales the smoke of a burnt branch, they will feel fear. Jupiter and Leo. Barley. It is nutritive, emollient, and refreshing to the highest degree. It is used in decoction prepared as follows. In half a liter of water boil 20 grams of peeled and ground barley for 20 minutes, cool, and strain. Barley flour is employed in external use to make poultices that are very useful for dissipating and attenuating humors. Hidden botany. The ears of this plant were offered by Brahmins in sacrifices to the gods and the 7 spiritual princes. Planet, sun, chicory, hot and dry. It is depurative and laxative. Against slow digestion, boil 20 grams of young chicory leaves in a liter of water. Let it cool slowly and then strain. Take 1 cup after every meal. With prolonged use, hepatic colic is cured. Hidden botany. Kneeling before this plant on the day of St. John the Baptist before sunrise. Rise slowly while pronouncing in a low voice 3 times the sacred word tetragrammaton. Take the plant home and keep it stored well wrapped in clean white cloths. With this one obtains a powerful amulet against all diabolical snares and against every kind of sorcery. All who dwell in the house where said amulet is kept shall participate in this beneficent influence. Hemlock, a supremely poisonous plant, for which reason its internal use must be avoided without a doctor's indication. Hemlock can be easily confused with chervil and parsley. To obviate fatal consequences, we shall point out the differences existing between the referred plants. Hemlock has leaves that are 3 times winged. They are acute leaflets incised at the edges. The smell is unpleasant. Chervil has leaves similar to those of hemlock, but they are short and broad. The smell resembles that of anise. Parsley has lower leaves that are twice winged, broad, triolate, and wedge-shaped. The smell is very faint. To combat hemlock poisoning, it is necessary to induce vomiting and subsequently administer diluted vegetable acids, such as lemon juice, vinegar, etc. Hemlock, produces no toxic effect on goats and rams, being poisonous to rabbits, oxen, and horses. In man it causes thirst, headaches and stomach aches, vertigo, delirium, and finally general cooling, followed by death. The fruits of this plant, which are less active than the leaves, are used to manufacture anise. To those condemned to the maximum penalty, the Greeks gave a potion made from hemlock to drink. History recalls with this the death of Socrates. Hidden botany. The juice of this plant is part of the witch's ointment. Prepared with wine, it produces a lethargic sleep in birds. Hound's tongue. Known by the name of pig's tongue, the leaves and root bark of this plant are used. It has soothing, pectoral, narcotic, and antidiarrheal properties. Excellent for combating bronchial catarrh. Administer as a decoction, 250 grams of water, 15 grams of root bark. Boil for 20 minutes. The dose is 5 small cups per day, very hot. The leaves are applied in poultices over epidermal inflammations and burns. Hidden botany. Carried on one's person, the root of this plant reconciles us with our enemies and attracts to us the sympathy of our fellow men. Cypress. The fruit of this resinous tree consists of cones or galls. Its decoction preserves hair in its primitive color, as it prevents gray hair until a very advanced age. Hidden botany. The cypress is the symbol of death. With its branches, the brow of Pluto was crowned. The wood of this tree serves for the construction of the triangular table employed in certain works of witchcraft, such as in the imprecation of reverse rosaries and others of the same nature. The wood is also used to cast into the fire together with herbs and drugs in certain evocations of elementals. Coca. Known by the name of Peruvian coca, a shrub whose leaves, having exciting properties like coffee and tea, are highly appreciated by Indians for chewing. The ancient or primitive Indians of Peru held this shrub as sacred, burning it on altars erected to the sun. It possesses a tonic action employed to increase strength in neurasthenics and convalescence. It mitigates hunger and fatigue. It has also been recommended to reduce obesity. Cocaine is extracted from the leaves of this plant. Hidden botany. Hypodermic injections of its salt, cocaine, may constitute a true pact with the beings of the astral, according to the wise occultist Stanislas de Guaita. Planets, Saturn and Sun. Scurvy grass. Its anti-scorbutic properties have been known for a long time. It is also recommended against pulmonary affections, bronchial catarrh, bladder catarrh, and leukorrhea. Use as an infusion. Place half a liter of water on the fire with 25 grams of leaves of this plant, and as soon as it begins to boil, remove and let cool, keeping the vessel well covered. Strain subsequently. Dose 4 to 6 cups per day. We are unaware of its magical properties. Coriander, also called cilantro. This plant is used to successfully combat hysteria in all its phases, gastrointestinal affections, cephalalgia, and certain fevers. Infusion. 200 grams of the plant's fruits in a liter of water. Take small cups daily or more, according to the intensity of the ailment. It is also employed to improve the flavor of beer. Hidden botany. With the fruits of this plant reduced to powder and mixed with musk, saffron, and incense, a perfume of Venus is obtained that is very effective in practices of sexual magic. Amorous amulets and talismans must be fumigated with this perfume. Comfrey. Known under various names, great comfrey, greater comfrey, donkey's ear, cow's tongue, cut herb, cardinal's herb, greater symphytum, dog's symphytum, consolida, and knitbone. The ancients attributed to it the property of consolidating fractures, hence the origin of the names consolida and consolda. Its broad rhizome, which contains much mucilage and is also somewhat astringent, is used internally against hemoptysis and diarrhea. Administer as an infusion. Boil 25 grams of rhizome in small pieces in half a liter of water for 25 minutes. Externally in fomentations to cure burns and wounds, in urethral and vaginal injections for venereal diseases, in plasters and poultices to cure dislocations, employing the fresh and well-minced rhizome. According to Bramwell, it favors the formation of new tissues and stomach ulcers. Hidden botany. Hot and dry. Venus in Sagittarius or in Aquarius. Plant consecrated by the Greeks to Juno, first of the female deities and queen of the gods. Her Greek name is Hebe, bindweed. A plant found in almost all of Spain and growing in reed beds. It is acrid and has a resin similar to jalap. Its juice, very milky, is an effective purgative. Its leaves are also purgative, but their action is less active. The root of this plant is advised to combat incipient paralysis. Hidden botany. If its leaves are applied for a moment over a contused wound and then immediately left in a damp place, the cure of the wound takes place magnetically. An infusion of its leaves mixed with wine or liquor constitutes a love philter. It has the virtue of preserving harmony and love between lovers. By carrying its root with oneself, it is said to prevent diseases, even to the point of being cured. Planets, Jupiter and Sun. Cabbage. The ancients considered it a universal remedy. Hippocrates prescribed it boiled with honey to attack every kind of colic. During pregnancy, Athenian women ate abundant dishes of cabbage. The enthusiasm for cabbage was such that they even attributed to the urine of people who consumed cabbages the extraordinary virtue of curing herpes, fistulas, and even cancer. Lumbar pains disappear with the application of boiled cabbage leaves applied very hot over the breasts of wet nurses. They cause mammary engorgements to disappear when used as a poultice. They also give very good results against rheumatic pains. For this purpose, they must be applied very hot and renewed at least every 2 hours. Cabbage seeds are an excellent vermifuge. Red cabbage, governed by Cancer and Scorpio, eaten before a banquet, prevents the discomforts produced by drinking large quantities of wine. It has properties against flatulence, bile, and jaundice. Cloves, commonly known by the name of spice cloves, originate from the Moluccas and Cayenne, the latter being the best. They have tonic, stomachic, cordial, and stimulating properties. They are employed in infusion and tincture. Infusion, boil 4 grams of cloves in half a liter of water. Dose, 1 spoonful every 3 hours. Tincture, macerate 20 grams of cloves in 100 grams of alcohol at 80 degrees. Dose, 3 to 8 grams daily. Mix with orange blossom and use externally. The tincture is recommended in frictions to combat paralysis and muscular weakness. This medication lowers the temperature during normal states. It momentarily calms toothache, but it is a remedy not at all recommendable. Cult botany, hot and dry plant. It is harvested when the sun is in Pisces or when the moon is in Cancer. The essence of cloves is used in various works of black magic. Associated with phosphorus, it attracts larvae, for they nourish themselves considerably from it. If a hypnotist keeps a spice clove in his mouth during his work, he will greatly increase his neuric force. The essence of cloves is employed in certain works of sexual magic. Maidenhair fern, known by the name of well maidenhair, is a fern that grows on the walls and in the crevices of humid rocks. It is employed fresh, for it soon loses its curative properties. It facilitates expectoration and calms chest pains. It favors the appearance of menstruation. It is used in lotions to tone the scalp, as it prevents hair loss. Cult botany, the crown of Pluto was formed from the leaves of this plant. Pluto was the mythological deity who presided over and governed the infernal regions. His Greek name is Hades. Planet, Saturn. Damiana, a plant from Brazil, California, and Mexico, of which only the leaves are used. It is diuretic and aphrodisiac. Its fundamental action consists of being a good nervous tonic, the effect of which is lasting. It is indicated in neurasthenia, slow convalescences, and impotence. It is a good stimulant of cerebral functions and excellent in cases of dyspepsia and gastralgia accompanied by migraine. It is equally recommended in albuminuria that follows scarlet fever and in affections of the kidneys and the bladder. It is used in infusion, decoction, and tincture. Infusion, 10 grams of crumbled material in a liter of water. Decoction, 30 grams of material in a liter of water. Dose, 60 to 125 grams per day. Tincture, 20 grams of material in 100 grams of 90-degree alcohol. Let steep for 15 days. We are unaware of its magical properties. Dandelion, a vulgar and common plant in our fields and meadows. It secretes an abundant and bitter milky juice. Of this plant, the leaves and root are used. Its decoction calms coughs and chest irritations, gives very good results against the spitting of blood, and is an excellent febrifuge and sudorific. It excites the flow of bile and exerts a favorable action on infarctions of the liver and in jaundice. It provokes contractions of the gallbladder. Furthermore, it has diuretic and depurative properties that advise it for chronic affections. Decoction. In half a liter of water, place 10 grams of crumbled material. White dittany, a branched herb with leaves similar to those of the ash tree, which is why it is commonly known by the name of fraxinella. It is balsamic, sedative, and evergreen. It stimulates and favors digestion and regularizes the menstrual flow. Its leaves in compresses are excellent for pregnant women. It is used in decoction. Boil 10 grams of the material in half a liter of water. Let cool and strain. Occult botany, a crown of these leaves, placed on the head of a magnetized person, contributes in a surprising manner to the development of somnambulistic clairvoyance. The root of white dittany, when left to dry and cast into the fire, produces a smoke that equally favors the work of the magnetizer and helps the refractory individual. Sun and Cancer. Elecampane. Of this plant, the rhizome and root are utilized. It is employed against bronchial catarrh, urine retention, irregularities of the menstrual flow, and in leukorrhea, in lack of appetite, and in pneumonia, to calm coughs and favor expectoration. Indicated in tonic dyspepsia, to stimulate the stomach mucosa. Excellent also against diarrhea. It is administered in decoction. Within the space of 15 minutes, boil 3 grams of rhizome in half a liter of water and let cool. Dose, small cups daily. The rhizome powder is very effective against diseases of the spleen. Take while fasting, 9 grams per day, diluted in generous wine. It is applied in lotions against malignant ulcers. Occult botany, in a very popular grimoire, The Secrets of Little Albert, it reads the following. On the night of St. John, as midnight strikes, the herb called elecampane is harvested, put to dry, and reduced to powder, adding to it a small quantity of ambergris. Everything in a small green silk bag and wear it next to the heart for 9 days. Place these powders immediately in contact with the skin of the person. One loves, without them noticing, and an irresistible love will be awakened in them toward the one who performed the described work. Tansy. The infusion of flowering tips corrects monthly irregularities. Daily dose, 8 grams. Catnip. Of this plant, the flowering tips are employed to combat consumptive weakness, languor, scurvy, neuralgias, syncope, digestive atony, and abnormal menstruation. It is also antihysteric. It is used in infusion. In half a liter of water, boil 10 grams of tips. Dose, small chalices per day. Occult botany, harvested under a favorable aspect and knowing how to extract the arcanum. As Paracelsus indicates, it constitutes a potion that tones the body in a prodigious manner and provides a long life exempt from diseases. Mercury. Black nightshade. Its berries are slightly narcotic, capable of producing baneful accidents due to their untimely use. For this reason, we abstain from indicating the use of this plant. It has sedative and emollient properties. Occult botany, the berries, mixed with myrtle branches, cast upon live coals, constitute a good magical perfume to drive away the larvae of the astral plane. Zodiacal sign, Libra, scabious. It grows in humid and clay terrains, and from it, the leaves and roots are utilized. Its sudorific and depurative properties made this plant popular in the treatment of smallpox, measles, scarlet fever, and putrid fevers. Its decoction is prepared in the following manner. Boil 30 grams of scabious leaves in half a liter of water for 25 minutes. Let cool and strain. Due to its astringent property, it is employed in vaginal washes to combat leukorrhea. Being furthermore vulnerary, it is applied externally to wash ulcers. We are unaware of its occult properties. Cold and dry, Taurus or Libra. Mercury, the tips under Aries, purging buckthorn. The berries of this shrub give off a very unpleasant smell and constitute a potent purgative. They are used as intestinal derivatives in cardiac affections. They provoke a salutary reaction in apoplexy and cerebral congestion. They are used against roundworms with very good results. They are taken on an empty stomach, from 15 to 20 berries according to the patient's age. Occult botany, hot and dry plant, consecrated to Saturn, emblem of envy. It was used to make the crown of thorns of our Lord Jesus Christ. In certain rites, it symbolizes virginity, sin, humiliation. Its branches, with their fruits and berries affixed to the doors and windows of a house, neutralize the efforts of sorcerers and prevent the entry of evil spirits. Zodiacal sign, Jimson weed. It grows in uncultivated places in sandy soils and among rubble. Its leaves are bitter and exhale a nauseating smell. It is administered in various forms, but as it is a most dangerous plant, we advise that only its dried leaves be employed to smoke them in cigarettes against asthma. For it is a remedy that always relieves, leaving the diverse applications it has at the disposal of the physician. Occult botany and black magic, extraordinary use is made of this solanaceous plant. For this reason, the French call it devil's herb. A large dose of it enters into the composition of the sorcerer's ointment, with which they anointed their whole body to attend the sabbatic feast called the conventicle. Planet, Saturn, beach. From this tree the bark is utilized. It is a purgative and anti-febrile. It is employed in decoction in a dose of 30 grams of dry bark or 15% of fresh with 200 grams of water, administering it 1 hour before the attack. In a larger dose, it is purgative and vomitive. Cult botany, the bark, reduced to powder, serves as a perfume to attract Saturnine influences, planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Broadbean. The decoction of broad beans is good against the stone. The plaster made with its flour resolves tumors of the sexual parts. Broad bean flour is excellent against sunburns and scalds produced by boiling water. For this, one rubs the ailing part for 10 or more minutes and then applies a compress of the flour itself. Cult botany. Its flowers bear the mark of the infernos according to the school of Pythagoras. The broad beans harvested in late October are under the auspices of Scorpio with Mercury. The fruit belongs to Saturn and the moon. Male fern. Of this plant the rhizome is employed, which is very sweet, nauseating and somewhat astringent. It has been touted as the best expeller of tapeworm or solitary worm. However, while it always expels the tapeworm originating from beef, it sometimes fails when dealing with the tapeworm originating from pork. The most used preparation is the concentrated ethereal tincture, but it may also be employed in powder, although its results are not always effective. Therefore, 10 grams of male fern powder diluted in 125 grams of water must be taken fasting all at once. Once an hour has elapsed, a purgative is taken. The dose for children is 50 centigrams for each year of age. In a medical treatise of the 16th century, we read the following: "The powdered root is good against the tapeworm. Cooked in wine, it opens obstructions of the spleen, cures melancholy, provokes the menses, and prevents conception. Cult botany, this plant symbolizes humility. It has abundant applications in black magic. It destroys nightmares, wards off lightning, and acts against spells." In the book Traité des Superstitions by the scholar J.B. Thiers, this plant is spoken of extensively. It is a work dating from the 17th century. From it, we shall transcribe only that which makes reference to the bewitchment of the fern harvested on the night of St. John's Eve. It reads as follows: "On St. John's Eve, at the first strokes of 12 o'clock, you shall place a new cloth of linen or hemp, not yet used, beneath a fern bush that you must have chosen beforehand, and blessed in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So that the devil may not raise obstacles against your enterprise. Upon beginning the work, you shall trace a magic circle around the place, placing inside it the persons who take part in the ceremony, the number of which must be 1 or 3. Once inside said circle, one must recite the litany of the angels in a loud voice in order to force the devil to withdraw, who, despite this, will intend to frighten the officiants so that they do not achieve their purpose. But upon hearing the litany, ipso facto, the infernal entities will withdraw from that place. The angelic litany having ended, the seed shall be gathered, and one shall proceed with all equity to its distribution, that no disputes arise nor discontent originates, for if it were so, the fern seed would lose a great part of its virtues. Next, the litany of the angels is cited by hierarchical order. The invocations amount to 72. Following this, the wonderful virtues of the fern are enumerated, which are very many, of which we cite a few. Any person who has this seed, if they touch another person with it, with the purpose of causing them some harm, or if they touch with it any woman to satisfy with her any lustful desire, they will sin mortally. The seed has virtue against every evil spirit that has possessed a person, man, woman, or child, for which it suffices to touch them with said seed, concentrating all will on wanting to cure them. Touching with it with unbreakable faith a person who finds themselves sick or disconsolate, they will heal and find the necessary consolation. So many are the virtues that this seed has that only the person who possesses it can inform about them in his dictionary. Infernal Colin de Plancy says, "No one is ignorant of the diabolical means of which sorcerers avail themselves to obtain grains of fern. On the 23rd day of June, the eve of St. John the Baptist, after having fasted for 40 days, they harvest on this night the grains of this herb, which has neither trunk nor flower, and which is reborn from its own root. The evil spirit mocks these miserable sorcerers, appearing to them during the night amidst a violent storm under a horrible form to frighten them further." The author continues explaining the mode of obtaining the wonderful seed, whose modus operandi varies little from that which we already know. Planet, Saturn. Zodiacal sign, Sagittarius. Fig tree. From this tree, the fruits and the green bark are used. Dried figs are emollient and pectoral. They cure corns, for which it suffices to keep an open one applied for days. Applied over tumors of the mouth, it softens and resolves them. The fresh bark halts nasal hemorrhages. For this, it is necessary to cut it, and the resulting mass is applied to the affected nostrils. Cult botany. With the leaves of this tree, Saturn was crowned, and among the Romans it was a sacred tree. The Greeks dedicated it to Mercury, the Spartans to Bacchus. In India, it was consecrated to Vishnu. A fig tree branch, harvested under the proper planetary aspect, calms the fury of bulls. Psychomancy constituted a divination with fig tree leaves. The question was written on a leaf, and according to the time it took to dry, the prophecy was concluded. The white fruit belongs to Jupiter and Venus, the black fruit to Saturn. Zodiacal sign, Aquarius, fennel. Its medicinal properties are very similar to those of anise. The fruits of the fennel and the tips exhale a pleasant smell. They are carminative and very useful in digestive atony, accompanied by hysteria and hypochondria, and are also indicated for nervous colic in children. These fruits constitute one of the best medicines to increase milk secretion. The leaves are employed both externally and internally as resolutives. The root is used as a diuretic and its bark as an emmenagogue. Infusion. In half a liter of water, boil 10 grams of material. Cover, let cool, and strain. Dose, 4 to 5 small cups per day. Cult botany, hot and humid. Zodiac signs, Pisces or Aquarius. Rest harrow, known by the name of cat's claws by virtue of this herb's thorns, which scratch like the animal's claws. It is apparative and possesses stomachic qualities. The roots are used in a decoction. In half a liter of water, boil 15 grams of crumbled material. Cult botany, harvested under the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter. This herb constitutes a powerful talisman against unfortunate accidents and also against snares of all kinds, against thieves. It avoids brawls, etc. Planets, Mars and Jupiter. Gentian. It is employed to combat arthritism, chlorosis, debility of the stomach, scrofula, intermittent fevers, gout, and to expel intestinal worms. It is used in infusion, tincture, or in wine according to the illness one has to combat. Against intermittent fevers, the infusion is as follows. In half a liter of water, boil 3 grams of crumbled root. Take a dose of small cups per day. Against arthritism, gout, and worms, the tincture, let 20 grams of crumbled root soften in 100 grams of 90-degree alcohol for 20 days. Take a dose from 3 to 9 grams in 3 times. With generous wine against scrofula, chlorosis, and debility of the stomach, let 30 grams of crumbled gentian soften in 650 grams of 90-degree alcohol. Add afterwards 1 liter of a good generous wine, and at the end of 15 days, filter. Dose, 3 small chalices per day before the main meals. Cult botany, hot and dry. The species that grows in the mountains was utilized by the ancient Rosicrucians in their ceremonies. It is dedicated to St. Peter. Planet Sun. Zodiac sign, Leo. Sunflower. From the Greek helios and anthos. As its name indicates, this flower turns to follow the course of the sun. It is consecrated to Apollo and constitutes one of the 12 magic plants of the ancient Rosicrucian fraternity. If we magnetize a somnambulist and hand her a sunflower with a good part of its stem, the somnambulist will acquire an extraordinary internal organic vision, metagnosis, which will allow her to make revelations as surprising as they are truthful. Furthermore, she will possess a special faculty for the interpretation of dreams. Cult botany, our criticism planet Sunday, zodiac sign Leo, black hellebore, known by the names Christmas rose, herb of hell, and fire rose. It is a violent purgative, being furthermore vermifuge, and its therapeutic employment is dangerous, for which reason the layman must not make use of it. Cult botany, black hellebore is one of the plants most used by sorcerers. Its root, harvested in the hour of Saturn, is cast upon live coals when infernal entities are evoked. It is hung around the neck of a child, and a piece of its root preserves him from the spell called the evil eye. If he is afflicted by the evil eye, the sorcery will disappear at once. Grippa, besides black hellebore, there exist green hellebore and white hellebore, whose properties we do not judge opportune nor useful to detail. Hyssop. Of this aromatic plant, the leaves and tips are used. Due to its stomachic properties, it is indicated to combat digestive debility and gastralgia. It renders great service in flatulent colic. For its stimulating property, it is used to awaken the appetite. Since it is anticatarrhal and expectorant, it gives excellent results in chronic catarrh of the lungs. It is employed in gargles to cure angina. Its use is well known in facilitating expectoration. In lotions, it is employed to cure blows, wounds, and contusions. Its infusion is prepared in the following manner. In half a liter of water, boil 8 grams of leaves and tips. Dose, several chalices per day, for its use offers no danger. Sun and Leo, incense. Gum resin that is extracted from Juniperus thyrifera and that arrives from Africa in the form of tears or grains of different sizes. In commerce, it is known by the name male incense. That which is extracted artificially bears the name female incense. The first is the most appreciated, also called olibanum. In therapeutics, it is used externally in powder, which is applied over malignant ulcers. With it, plasters are also made to correct sprains and against all kinds of blows. It is equally employed in fumigations, directing its emanations toward limbs affected by rheumatism. The fumigations may be substituted by flannel cloths, well perfumed and applied hot. Cult botany, according to mythology, Leucotho, daughter of Orcamus and Eurynome, gave herself to her beloved Apollo. The girl's father, upon learning of the fact, became enraged and buried her alive. Then the sun god, to honor her, converted her into a small tree that yielded incense. This was the perfume that all temples adopted in their religious festivals. Consequently, this essence has been used since the most remote antiquity for the purification of the temple environment and for divine worship. In our days, it still retains the same uses, but it is being improved, mixing it with benzoin, musk, storax, amber, and other solar drugs. With all this, a magic perfume is formed when its powder is cast upon live coals. Here are the doses that enter into the preparation of the incense employed in the Christian ritual: 7 parts of male incense, 3 parts of storax, 3 parts of benzoin, 2 parts of juniper seeds. Reduce to powder, mix, and pass through a sieve. This preparation is also employed in theurgic evocations. We recommend it in the celebration of spiritist sessions, principally when dealing with communications with beings from the beyond. Planets, Sun, and Jupiter. Zodiac sign, Leo, Ipecacuanha. Of this plant, only the root is utilized. It determines hypersecretion of the glands of the digestive apparatus and provokes vomiting after bothersome nausea and abundant salivation, leaving subsequently a passing depression. It is administered as a vomitive in powder. The dose is 1.50 grams in papers of 50 centigrams, taking them every quarter of an hour with warm water. It is very useful in gastric indigestion and at the beginning of a poisoning. It fluidifies expectoration in capillary bronchitis and pneumonia with accumulation of exudation. It is an excellent remedy against acute dysentery. Decoction. By short boiling and consecutive infusion for 12 hours of 2 to 6 grams of ipecacuanha in 300 grams of water. The same sediment may serve 3 days in a row. The liquid is taken in 3 times during the day: planets, moon, and sun. Iris. We are unaware if it possesses therapeutic applications. Cult botany, its flowers, like the rainbow, symbolized peace. Harvested in the hour of Venus, they have a very notable virtue. If, during the sleep of a virgin boy or girl, a small branch of these flowers is placed under the pillow, they will have prophetic dreams with such certainty that their indications may be taken literally. Venus, hyacinth. It is not used in medicine, however, in a celebrated book of secrets from the 16th century titled Secreti di Don Alessio. We read that the juice of the hyacinth root prevents the development of the Pelos system and retards puberty. It says further that the root boiled cures tumors of the testicles. To obtain hyacinths in winter, one fills a bottle with water which must be the size of the plant's bulbs. These bulbs are arranged in such a way that the crown touches the water level, which shall be renewed every 20 days, throwing in a little sal ammoniac, so that it does not spoil. This cultivation provides a pleasant entertainment. For the hyacinths, displaying the beauty of their flowers during the winter when they do not exist in the gardens, constitute a pleasant surprise for one who is ignorant of the manner of obtaining them. Cultivation reduces itself to what has been said and to providing them with light and air from time to time. Planets, Sun, and Venus. Juniper. The berries of this shrub are excellent diuretics. Therefore, they are recommended against renal calculi and dropsy. They are equally anticatarrhal and modifiers of secretions in catarrh of the bladder and blenorrhea. They yield effective results in combating asthma and bronchitis, and their use against liver stones is well known. In very high doses, it irritates the urinary tract. It is employed as an infusion. Boil 10 grams of ground berries in half a liter of water. Dose, small cups per day. With the essence of the fruit, chronic rheumatism is combated. These berries are also employed in the manufacture of the liquor called gin. Thrown upon live coals, they purify a sick person's room. Cult botany. A branch of this shrub drives away snakes, for it bears within itself, and in various ways, the exoteric sign of the Trinity. Burnt with incense, its grain not only purifies the environment of miasmas, but also wards off malefic entities of the astral plane and cures the possessed. Planet, Venus. Zodiacal sign, Gemini. Kuso. This tree, called Kuso or Kusa, grows in Abyssinia. Its female inflorescences are used, desiccated, and pulverized. These flowers are purgative, but their most notable property is that of expelling the tapeworm. The best manner of employing it is by the system of infusion, which is obtained in the following mode. In 250 grams of water, boil 20 grams of material reduced to powder, then let it cool until lukewarm. If, at the end of an hour, the medicament has not produced a purgative effect, castor oil is the most indicated. Cult botany, sacred tree of the Hindus, indispensable in all acts of religious and ascetic life. It has powerful magnetic properties and is a universal vehicle. Dried, pulverized, and thrown upon live coals, its flowers give off emanations that effectively aid the development of psychic forces and enormously facilitate mediumistic improvement. Planet, sun lily. According to ancient medicine, the pollen of this flower is good for curing burns. Its distilled water relieves the pains of childbirth and cures ailments of the sight. Boiled with breadcrumbs, the bulbs cause abscesses to ripen and suppurate in a short time. The woman who eats 2 small pieces of the root of this plant will release, without pain, the dead fetus she may have in her entrails. The tip of the root, mixed with rancid butter, cures leprosy. Cult botany, the lily is the symbol of chastity. Gabriel carries it in his message to Mary. This flower is the image of universal creation, the action of primitive fire upon mother water. In the Middle Ages, it was believed that the pollen of this flower dissolved in a vessel of water or wine caused the maiden who drank it to urinate abundantly if she were not chaste. Hung around the neck, the root reconciles lovers who have broken off their relations. It must be harvested when the moon or Venus is in Aries or Libra. With this plant, a magical perfume is manufactured. It is very convenient for burning in the precinct where theurgic experiments are performed or astral manifestations are expected. Cold and dry. Jupiter, Venus, moon in Aries or Taurus. Lotus, from the Greek lotos. From the religious point of view, it has the same meaning as the lily. Bodhisattva presents it to Maya, plant of the sun. H.P. Blavatsky, in her Theosophical Glossary, writes the following: a plant of supremely occult qualities, sacred in Egypt, India, and in other parts, they call it the child of the universe, which bears in its bosom the likeness of its mother. There were times when the world was a lotus, Padma of gold, says the allegory. A great variety of these plants, from the majestic lotus of India to the lotus of the swamps, bird's foot trefoil, and the Greek Dioscorides, is used as food in Crete and other islands. It is a species brought from India to Egypt, where it was not a native plant. The Egyptians saw in the lotus a symbol of the rebirth of the sun and of resurrection. For this reason, they place it upon the head of the infant Horus. He is represented emerging from the calyx of this flower. Planetary sign, Sunday. Zodiacal sign, Leo. Cherry laurel. Therapeutics utilizes only the leaves of this tree. Its active principle is hydrocyanic acid, a very strong poison. Therefore, the layman must abstain from its use in medicinal matters. Cult botany, the cherry laurel is one of the plants most employed in works of sorcery. For information purposes, let us see one of the many spells that witches perform to harm a person. They take a frying pan of small size, fill it to the brim with olive oil, and in the hour of Saturn, gather 3 small branches of cherry laurel and place them upon the surface of the liquid, forming a cross. Finally, they pronounce with heart inflated with hatred the accursed imprecation, and wait with the most absolute conviction that the effects of their crime will not delay in manifesting. Unfortunately, that is what happens. Saturn and Moon. Common laurel. The Latin denomination of Laurus nobilis indicates the difference that exists between this and the former. The properties of the common laurel are carminative, digestive, stomachic, and nervine. The leaves are employed in infusion. Boil 10 grams of leaves in half a liter of water and let cool. Dose: 4 or 5 small glasses daily. This infusion is also employed in vaginal injections against the laxity of the sexual organs and in full-body baths to combat general debility in children. From an ancient book of medicine, we copy the following: the fresh leaves of laurel crushed are excellent against the bites of venomous animals. The juice of its leaves, taken in doses of 3 or 4 drops in water, provokes menstruation, corrects stomach disorders, diminishes deafness, cures irake, and removes spots from the face. Cult botany. Tree consecrated to Apollo. Daphnomancy is one of the diverse forms of divinatory magic much used in antiquity. The material employed in this ceremony was laurel branches with which the soothsayers crowned themselves. It was practiced in 2 ways. One consisted of throwing a dry branch into the fire, and by the crackling, the scintillation, and the smoke produced during the burning, omens were made. These were uncertain when the small branch was consumed without making any noise, but one prophesied with all certainty when it crackled noisily and the sparks were abundant and a very fine smoke was obtained. Furthermore, all this constituted a good augury. The other manner of predicting consisted of chewing some young laurel leaves. The augur would close his eyes and begin the work of mental concentration. After a certain time, more or less prolonged, he gave the answer to the consultation that had been made to him. The latter form of divination was that which the Pythonesses, the Sibyls, and the priests of Apollo practiced, and for this reason they were called Daphnephagi, that is, laurel eaters, hot and dry. Sun in Leo or moon in Pisces. Hops. This plant has bitter, sedative, and anaphrodisiac properties. It favors digestion in cases of dyspepsia and soothes the pains of stomach cancer. It is indicated against scrofula and lymphatism, an excellent remedy in combating nervous insomnia and nocturnal emissions. Furthermore, it is very useful in convalescence, in scurvy, in infarctions of the liver and spleen, in catarrhs, and in migraines. Administered in infusion at a dose of 15 grams per liter. It is applied externally as a tincture at a dose of 2 to 4 grams as a sedative on cancerous ulcers. In a small dose, hops increase the appetite. The root is an energetic blood depurative. To combat genital eroticism and cure spermaturia, lupulin is prescribed. This is what the powder that the plant contains in its cones is called. These cones are harvested at the end of August, subjected to a process that does not alter their aroma or taste, and are employed in the manufacture of beer. Planets, Saturn and Moon. Chamomile, called Roman chamomile, and also chamomile. The part utilized is its flowers or flower heads. Its principal qualities are tonic, antispasmodic, and antihysteric. It is employed in cases of indigestion and in spasmodic and windy colics. It calms hysteria and the excitement of easily excitable persons. Infusion, flower heads, 5 grams, 500 grams of water, cult botany, slightly hot and moist. Planet, Sun, zodiac sign, Libra. Apple tree, the bark of the fresh root of the apple tree, in a dose of 60 grams to 200 grams of water, cuts fever attacks, principally if its use is preceded by gentle vomiting followed by a purgative. Externally, the pulp of the roasted fruit is used in poultices to combat bothersome styes. For this, the pippin apple is the best. Cult botany. Tree consecrated to Ceres. In the celebrated treatise on anaerocriticism by Artemidorus of Doldis, titled De Somnorum Interpretation, a wide space is dedicated to dreams related to the apple tree and its fruits. The apple represents man's trade, his profession, his employment, etc., if one dreams of eating sweet apples. For an artist, glory will smile upon him very soon. For a merchant, he will conduct great business. For a lover, he will be happy in his love. For a military man, he will achieve great honors, and thus, in this sense, one may compile the other cases. If the person dreams they are eating green apples, the prediction will take longer to be realized. If they are sour, the omens will be adverse, cold and slightly dry. The stalk is of Scorpio, the leaves are of Gemini and Virgo, the fruit is of Venus. Mandrake, little used in medicine. In compensation, it plays a very important role in the magical arts. Cult botany, the Hebrews knew this plant under the name of Jabora. It forms part of the composition of the witch's ointment to attend the Sabbath. The root is a powerful condenser of astral forces. Chinese sorcerers employ this plant, which they call gigsong, to provoke madness or cause terrible sufferings. For this they must gather the plant under a determined astrological influence, manipulate it according to a malefic rite. The following data were extracted from the Theosophical Glossary by Helena Blavatsky. The root of this plant has a human form. In occultism, it is used by black magicians for various perverse ends, and some left-hand path occultists make homunculi with it. According to vulgar belief, it utters screams when it is pulled from the earth. Since the most remote times, it has been the magical plant par excellence. Its roots, apparently, have no stalk, and from its head sprout large leaves like a gigantic lock of hair. Those found in Spain, Italy, Asia Minor, or Syria present little resemblance to man. However, in the islands of Candia and Carmania, near the city of Adana, they have a human form that astounds and are highly prized as amulets. Women also carry it by way of an amulet against sterility and for other diverse ends. They are especially effective in black magic. The ancient Germans venerated as household gods certain misshapen idols manufactured from the mandrake root, whence comes its name of alrunes, derived from the German term Allrun. Those who possessed one of such figures considered themselves happy, seeing that they watched constantly over the house and its inhabitants. Equally with said figurines, they divine the future, emitting certain sounds or words. The possessor of a mandrake obtained, furthermore, through its influence, voluminous goods and riches. From the Dictionnaire Infernal by Colin de Plancy we translate the following: demons appear under the form of small men, beardless, and with matted hair. The ancients attributed wonderful virtues to the plant called mandrake, such as that of fecundating sterile women and attracting all sorts of fortunes. The most prodigious of these roots were those that had been sprinkled with urine of a hanged man, but they could not be uprooted without dying. And to avoid this misfortune, they inundated the earth around the root, tied the end of a hemp rope to it, and the other end to the neck of a black dog, to which they applied some good strokes of a whip, so that upon fleeing it might pull up the root. The poor animal died in this operation. Meanwhile, the happy mortal who possessed the root was the owner of a powerful talisman, an inestimable treasure. Although with this he did not obtain everything. Planet, Saturn. Zodiacal sign, Capricorn. White horehound. It has stimulant and restorative properties. Furthermore, it is a laxative, diaphoretic, and a good digestive tonic. It yields very good results in respiratory affections, stubborn coughs, and tuberculosis. It is applied against hysteria, chlorosis, fevers, and to aid childbirth. This prolonged use combats obesity. It is administered as an infusion in half a liter of water. Boil 10 grams of crushed material. Let cool and strain. The juice of this plant applied in ointments halts hair loss. Cult botany. It is gathered under the zodiacal sign of Virgo, black henbane, hot and dry. It has many uses in medicine, but we will note only a few as it is a somewhat dangerous plant, for which reason only physicians should use it. Let us see an excellent oil for the cure of articular rheumatism and neuralgias. Place in a bain-marie 25 grams of young leaves of black henbane in a liter of good olive oil, and leave until the vegetation water of the material evaporates. Apply over the sick part, covering it with a wool handkerchief, secured with a bandage. The seeds of this plant are used in fumigations to calm toothache and cure chilblains. The smell of black henbane, breathed for some time, produces a deep torpor. Cult botany, the smoke of its seeds, gathered and burned in the hour of Saturn, provokes brawls, violent arguments. Wicked sorcerers take advantage of the malefic properties of black henbane to produce madness, and at times death, acting at a distance and with total impunity. This plant forms part of the ointment with which witches anointed themselves to attend the Sabbath. Better that this infernal recipe remain ignored. It has been published solely in the book Pactum, nowadays, fortunately, very rare. Lemon balm, known under the name of balm. It is a plant employed against hysteria and hypochondria in spasmodic states, fainting spells, vertigo, migraines, and gastric atony. Its most current use is by infusion in half a liter of water. Boil 5 grams of the plant crumbled. Dose, 1 chalice every hour or more, according to the cases. It is employed in lotions to cure weakness of sight. It produces excellent effects on sores and wounds. Cult botany. The sibyls of the temples of Cumae, Delphi, Erythrae, Libya, and other places made use. To awaken their inspiration, of a dynamic beverage in which lemon balm entered as the major part. According to an ancient tradition, if we hang a whole sprig on the neck of an ox, the animal will follow obediently wherever it has been placed. Planets, Sun and Jupiter. Annual Mercury. The fresh plant is employed. It is a laxative and, in large doses, purgative. Furthermore, it is a good diuretic recommended in dropsy. It is also advised for intestinal worms and incipient hemorrhoids. It halts the secretion of milk in nursing women. Persons of delicate stomach should abstain from the use of this plant. The juice is employed from 10 to 20 grams as a laxative, from 5 to 10 grams in the morning, fasting. For the other affections, from 3 to 4 grams daily, diluted in sugared water and distributed in 3 doses. In clysters, 125 grams of annual mercury, 1,000 grams of boiling water. After resting for 2 hours, add 1,000 grams of white honey, cold and moist. Its juice in decoction facilitates the conception of a son if the woman for 5 days employed the male plant, or of a daughter if she used the female plant. Planet, moon, zodiacal sign, Virgo, yarrow. The root has a camphorated smell. It is administered in infusion with 20 grams per liter of water, preparing it at the moment of being administered, for it alters upon contact with the air. The leaves and flowers are astringent. Useful in hemorrhoids, uterine hemorrhages, and hemoptysis. The leaves in decoction are applied externally to heal wounds. Planets, sun and moon, zodiacal sign, Cancer, myrrh. In therapeutics it has a very reduced field. It is generally used in powder which is applied over cancerous ulcers and in fumigation to disinfect a sick person's room. Cult botany, this fragrant resin, mythology says, was produced by the tears of the goddess Myrrha, who united incestuously with her father and conceived the gentle Adonis. According to Van Helmont, myrrh, diluted in alcohol and taken in certain doses, prolongs life and avoids an infinity of diseases. Myrrh is used extraordinarily in diverse works, both theurgic and goetic. The following composition is that of an excellent magical perfume, highly recommendable during the execution of any work of high magic. 150 grains of myrrh, 100 grains of storax, 100 grains of benzoin, 100 grains of incense, 50 grains of cascarilla. It is burned over a small metallic vessel, sprinkling the composition with 90-degree alcohol. Planet, Venus. Strawberry. A plant that produces a sweet and fragrant fruit known to all as the strawberry. From this plant, the fruits and roots are utilized. In therapeutics, strawberry syrup is employed as a refreshing agent and is indicated against jaundice and the stone sickness. It combats dysenteries, diarrheas, hemorrhages, and gonorrheas that do not present grave characters. A decoction of the roots of this plant is employed. In half a liter of water, boil 20 grams of said roots. Cult botany. With the leaves of the strawberry plant, belts are made that preserve one from snake bites. Planet, Jupiter. Zodiacal sign, Pisces. Myrtle. It is recommended for healing contusions and sores applied externally. It is used in powder or decoction. This is verified in the following manner. In half a liter of water, boil 10 grams of myrtle leaves and fruits for 15 minutes. Cotton compresses well soaked in the liquid are applied over the ailment. The vapors of its infusion, inhaled through the mouth, cure migraines. Desiccated, pulverized, and confectioned with egg white, the fruit halts vomiting when placed in the form of a plaster over the stomach. Cult botany, the myrtle was consecrated to Venus and to the Penates gods. It is the emblem of compassion. The branches, leaves, and fruits of this plant, when completely dry, are crumbled and mixed with cypress branches equally dry. They are burned, and upon the flame being produced, a small quantity of male incense is thrown upon it. One thus obtains magical perfumes of great value for attracting astral entities. Myrtle is employed in diverse works of erotic magic. Cold and dry. Planet, Venus. Zodiacal sign, Taurus. Moss. It is employed against children's roundworms. It is administered in powder in the dose of 1 to 2 grams before 3 years of age, from 2 to 5 grams after 5 years. It may also be administered in decoction in water or milk in the dose of 5 to 15 grams. In decoction, it halts hair loss, reinforces the teeth, and cuts blood flows. Planet, Saturn. Turnip. Cooked under ashes and applied behind the ears, it calms toothache. To calm the itching of chilblains, apply poultices of peeled and cooked turnip against catarrh, bronchitis, and whooping cough. The root is employed in decoction. With this root, an excellent soup is seasoned for persons suffering inflammation of the intestines. Planet, Moon. Zodiacal sign, Capricorn. Narcissus. It has antispasmodic, astringent, emetic, and febrifuge qualities. It is employed in nervous coughs and whooping cough. Used externally, it is a good emmenagogue. The flowers, dried rapidly, preserve their yellow color. In this case, they are antispasmodic and narcotic. The case is told of a lady from Valenciennes who suffered from great convulsions and who, upon leaving a large number of narcissus flowers in her room, managed to pass several consecutive nights without the slightest discomfort. The following day, after having removed the flowers, the attacks repeated themselves. According to the ancients, the distilled water of its root considerably increases the secretion of sperm. In lotion, it hardens the breasts. Cult botany, cold and dry. The ancients dedicated the narcissus flower to the Furies and to Pluto. Whoever carries it with them attracts the friendship of virgins. Planet, Venus. Zodiacal sign, Taurus and Leo. Walnut tree. The fresh leaves in infusion are an excellent remedy to combat scrofula and jaundice. The infusion is obtained by boiling 10 grams of leaves in half a liter of water. Vaginal injections cure whites and leukorrhea. In lotion, it prevents hair loss. The smell of the leaves attracts fleas. Planet, moon. Zodiacal sign, Sagittarius. Olive tree. The flower and the fruit are found only on stalks that are 2 years old. In therapeutics, the leaves and the bark are employed. The oil also has diverse applications. The infusion of olive leaves and bark is excellent for washing every species of sores, to expel intestinal roundworms. One shall take a daily cup fasting. The infusion is obtained by boiling 10 grams of crumbled material in half a liter of water. After the first boiling, let it cool and strain. Pure olive oil is an excellent laxative. With it, the most rebellious constipation is cured by taking, while fasting, a spoonful of the oil for some time. In the same manner, those who suffer from hepatic colic and nephritis find a marked relief in this simple remedy. Furthermore, pure olive oil mixed with egg yolk and applied to burns promptly calms the pain. Cult botany. The ancients consecrated the olive tree to the goddess Minerva. An olive branch is the emblem of peace. The oil is a powerful condenser of light. It is of great utility in medicine, and is employed in divers magical works. If the word Athene is written with celestial ink upon an olive leaf, and if this leaf is tied to the head, every species of restlessness, bad mood, and baleful ideas vanishes. Planet, Jupiter. Zodiacal sign, Pisces. Plantain. The leaves of this herb are astringent and of popular use in gargles to cure inflammations of the mouth, and in lotions those of the eyes. Furthermore, they act as a good pectoral in bronchial catarrh. Applied directly, while crushed, they heal ulcers and wounds in general. The decoction is prepared in the following manner. In half a liter of water, 10 grams of crushed leaves are boiled for 20 minutes. The root is good against migraine, taken with wine. It is a counterpoison for opium. Reduced to impalpable powder and mixed with wine, the seed stops dysentery. Cult botany, hot and somewhat moist. The whole plant carried with one preserves from malefics. Aries and Leo. Sunday. It is harvested when the sun and the moon are in Cancer, or else when it is in Pisces and the moon in Cancer. Agaric, a genus of fungi that are borne on the trunk of various trees. It is vermifuge, pectoral, and furthermore, it is a purgative that produces very violent colic. We are unaware of its magical properties. It is hot, between dry and moist. Planet, moon. End of the book, The Magical Plants.